Alrighty then. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to an impromptu rambling night's discussion. I'm your usual host, Jonathan Cat 79, aka Chris, joined by my usual co-host, Erica, aka Dark Neon.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah. So we want to thank y'all for anyone who decides to pop in to join us in our little, suddenness. I bet you guys are probably thinking, I'm not seeing any dinosaurs here. Like, are you gonna have dinosaurs in your dinosaur discussion? Well, not tonight. Tonight we're gonna take a visit to the seedier undershade belly of Gotham City tonight to discuss Christopher Nolan's film Batman Begins, which turned 20 last June. We'd have done a big deal about it on the day of, but silly me got the UK and US dates confused, and I missed it by a whole Sunday. I'm all like, oh,
It is kind of the first, like having a Christopher Nolan movie not coming out in July.
well, because it turns out that Nolan likes putting out movies on July because it's his birthday month. And most of his movies that tend to come out near his birthday month tend to do pretty good, which is why he was a little bit cheesed when Tenet was forced to go into a at home release day strategy to the point where he said, he broke a long standing relationship with Warner Brothers to go off and play with Universal now, and now he's going to be bringing the Odyssey to life over there for them instead of for WB. So, and before anyone asks, that decision was a snafu before David Zaslav and Discovery took over for Warner Brothers. This was the last managed membership who put, I think Jason Schwartzman, he was an AT&T guy, and they put so much into the we're going to bring HBO Max to premiere Warner Brothers content media. They even renamed their company from Warner Brothers Movie Company to Warner Media, which you probably noticed when you saw Godzilla vs Kong's opening logos. So they were so going all in, and Nolan was like, "Oh, you can do that, but my stuff is made for the. I'm a cinematic man. This is my craft. You're not just gonna put my stuff on a phone screen." And they were like, "Well, what is this happening? COVID and all that stuff." He keeps saying he was willing to wait for the theaters to fully open when they said, "Well, we can do this," but they also want to say, "But can you give us first looks on Max at the same time too?" No, and apparently someone went behind his back and approved that anyway, and he thought, "You what the heck with it," and left, and never looked back since.
Given that Oppenheimer won pretty much the best picture and the best lead, and goodness knows how many other best
Technical stuff.
wins in that category. Yeah, Warner Brothers really bit that one hard, and
But
they continue to bite hard. But hopefully this July, maybe things might turn around for another certain DC character. We'll get to him in a couple weeks.
yeah, and I figured now would be the better time because we're about to enter a massive July where there's going to be so much stuff coming one after the other. It'll make your head spin. And we're also entering a lot of 20th anniversaries and such, or even golden oldies like a big 50th for Amityville's own resident, Fish in the water.
Because
Amity, not
by my
Amityville.
count, isn't by my count, isn't there like only like three big ones coming out in July?
Well, yeah, we got Jurassic Rebirth. We got Superman the week after. If you're into A24, they got that Pedro Pascal, Joaquin Phoenix movie, Eddyville coming out. I'm into that. And then we got Fantastic Four rounding out the thing at the end.
Uh, Third one you listed, that's the first I ever heard of that.
Oh yeah, it's about it's set during 2020 during the height of the big pandemic, and Joaquin Phoenix plays a local town sheriff, and he is going to be running up for mayor of a town. It also has Peter Pascal playing a mayor of a different political persuasion that and there's talks about masking and this and that. I think Pedro Pascal is the guy who's all in favor of a future for it's in New Mexico City. So I'm looking at that going, oh shit! Before I even realized New Mexico, I'm all looking at the backgrounds going, that looks very much like a few out of town places I know in the state. Like not like I haven't been to them directly, but it's by a place we passed on the way to Mexico called Truth and Consequences, and I saw that and I'm going, it's a fictional version of that town. But I'm going, oh my god, that sky, that desert. They filmed this in my home state. And you got Pedro Pascal is just a delight. I know people are growing tired of him, but I'm in love with that fella. But anyway, well, I'm getting way off topic. So I have lines here. So the future of the DC in cinema is in question. After a rousing start and domination at the box office, their cinematic entries have grown divisive over changing tones and honoring of the source material, characters becoming unrecognizable from the page to some, and after a costly final entry that felt to some to be more about the pageantry and special effects, and even an appearance by George Clooney, clashes over with director's cuts and putting a freeze on potential sequels to the latest caper, the studio has thrown their hands up and are putting all their eggs in a fresh start with a back to basics approach, a director with a new handle on the material, more honoring of the pages of what came before, and a radical approach to an iconic icon of both comics and cinema, hoping to make a triumphant return and maybe not make an embarrassment of themselves in the process. So of course I'm talking about 2005 and Batman Begins and not Superman, although the parallels are very similar.
Who'd have thought?
I don't know. I guess.
But yeah, the year was 2005, and all you young bloods out there might not know it, considering that we've been kind of basking in all the cinematic universes and hearing constant articles after articles that like the superhero genre is dying. You know, really, those articles have been going around for like a decade, counting at this point. So clearly, it's either a slow death or it's gonna need a second opinion on that one.
To quote the
But
meme,
2005.
I'm presenting to you the death of the comic book film industry. Sheen, this is the sixth time you've shown us the death of the comic book industry. But yeah.
But yeah, turn the clocks back to 2005, which was at the time the Wild West of superhero movies, as it was in full swing. There were some hits like Spider-Man 2, the Bryan Singer X-Men movies. There's some misses like the Ghost Rider movies and the Hulk, and some that people will come around on years later, like Superman Returns.
Yeah, and then I think this year also saw the release. It was coming after this. I think the Tim Story Fantastic Four film, which if I had a nickel for every time DC released a film in the same year as a Fantastic Four film was coming out, I think I'd have three of them at this point because we had this and the Tim Story Fantastic Four. We got First Steps and Superman, and I think in 2015 did we get BVS? Oh, that was 2016. Actually, no, I only have two nickels because DC didn't put out any film project when Fan Four Stick was coming out. Thank God.
Wait, uh, yeah, that's right. I almost did the math wrong, but yeah. So the superhero genre wasn't as big. Mostly, it was kind of divided into different houses. You had Warner Brothers, obviously, who was at that point not haven't really done anything since what was it, '97? But they were still going along with like their animated projects. Their animated shows were kind of like helping pick up the slack. But then you had Sony with the Spider-Man movies. You had Universal with Hulk, and I think it was another. No, it was just that.
And then we
And
had
then
Fox with.
mostly it was mostly Fox that had like stuff like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men movies, and Daredevil too. But hey sis. But uh, yeah, it wasn't as bombastic as it is nowadays, where constantly you'd have like movie after movie after movie and TV show and TV show, nothing but superhero stuff. So really, whenever they popped up, it would be Star first.
But yeah, and I bet you people are going, what about Disney? Well, Disney were too busy trying to recoup their animation studios after Treasure Planet and a few other projects fell apart. They're like, what do we do? What do we do? And I think Pixar was the one that was actually carrying Disney on their back for that time period. Although they did have a superhero movie that year, a movie that will turn 20 in November, but that's a story for another time. You could say it was
Those
rather.
movies got oh,
You could say it was
it's
rather
like
incredible.
no, I still stand by it. Those movies got skunked because people got blindsided by pretty CG movies of like farting ogres and Will Smith fish and all that bullshit.
Oh, Incredible actually was well received at the time.
No, I was talking about the Disney projects like Atlantis, Treasure Planet, for goodness sakes. whatever.
Yeah, the point is Disney didn't have their foot in a superhero book, so yeah, the biggest game in town. I think the giant to beat was Sony and Fox, which is funny now given how people laugh every time Sony announces a spin-off villain with a Spider-Man, to the point where the last one bombed so hard they're actually officially killing off any other solo projects without Spider-Man going forward. Because I'm going, it took you this long, but I guess they got the message eventually. And Fox, well, no.
But yeah, needless to say, one particular superhero powerhouse franchise that was kind of a little bit absent was, of course, the Batman movies, which started in 1989 with Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, led and directed with Tim Burton, and which followed with Batman Returns, which kind of got people sour because apparently if you market through market a dark movie through McDonald's, people like throw their arms up and crazy. But if that's the case, I have a few great big questions for Burger King, like pushing through small soldiers and like. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And then you had swap around with Schumacher with Batman Forever, which wasn't as it wasn't a huge failure, but people were kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of different."
Well,
But
you can tell they were trying to course correct from Returns, because Returns got so much backlash. I'm pretty sure Warner Brothers told Schumacher, "Listen, you can't have it turn off the parents. We don't want to piss off the parents somehow. Make it as silly as possible."
honestly, I'm still kind of waiting around for the Schumacher house to lament and give out a Schumacher cut. I mean, hey, we got Donner cut for the Superman 2. I mean, why can't we see like extended Batman Forever?
Because I'm sure you saw those behind the scenes footage of Val Kilmer looking at a 6 foot bat face to face with him, which is supposed to be the symbol of how he's Batman and stuff. But some people were looking at that picture and going, "Was Man Bat in these things and I just missed it?" But
Whatever. And then Batman and Robin. There's barely anything to say that it kind of goes without saying.
well,
It's basically a toy commercial just with Arnold Schwarzenegger and uh,
Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman. Ah, the name escaped me. She was awesome in Kill Bill. Why did I forget that?
But
Amy.
point is though is that the movie's become more famous for the fact that its director and the star have both apologized for making it, even though I think on its own right, as a romp to the Adam West era stuff, it's a fine big budget over the top production. But when you look at
I
Keaton,
liked it. I mean, I liked it. It was like my first Batman movie when I saw it as like a little itty bitty kid.
but the
It was like
difference,
one of the first few live action movies I actually watched as much because back then it was just mostly watching like Disney and all of that. And goodness knows that boy, the signs. There are signs. Why couldn't you see the signs?
but oh man, yeah, let's see the difference between Batman, not '89, and Batman and Robin is like Godzilla, King of the Monsters, American version, versus what's the stupidest of the movies I can think of?
There's a smog monster.
Yeah, the Smog Monster, where it's not bad, but you have a lot of moments where you scratch your head going, "What were they on when they thought of this? Rubber lips are immune to your poison." I mean,
Oh God, the way they butchered handling Barb. Well, she wasn't Barbara Gordon in the movie. She is apparently uh, Barbara Pennyworth or like a
Alfred's niece.
relative. Yeah.
And I like how people joke, "Okay, we got nipples on the men's suit, but you are very conservative with Batgirl," which I think thank God they did. I don't think to be able to get out with a PG-13 rating, but still, I'm just going. It's kind of funny in hindsight, and it's not like I says. If you're looking at like something that's over the top, Silver Age, Adam West style antics on a big budget, I mean, and the thing is, there are signs of something good in there. I think George Clooney is a fantastic Bruce Wayne. But notice how I
Yeah.
said Bruce Wayne.
I've actually had that thought when I was working out on the treadmill today. It's like, in retrospect, among all the different Batman, George Clooney had a pretty good Bruce Wayne. It's just that Batman wasn't really Batmaning
It
like I
felt
was
like he just put
hoping.
on the cowl and called it a day rather than trying to make. Because even Kilmer made an effort to like make sure his Bat persona felt different than his Bruce persona. In fact, I noticed his Bat persona was more quippy. Like the whole bit of, perhaps I can persuade you to take a sandwich this time, sir? I'll take drive through. Like he was he was quick to like have the thing. Like my favorite part was when Meridian's psychoanalyzing him, and he mentioned how you might as well go try firefighters, much less equipment to take off, stuff like that. Whereas his Bruce Wayne is very haunted and very like, you know. So like I'm saying though, it's
It's too many questions.
yeah. So Clooney, yeah. The point is, I guess the response to it was so strong that Warner Brothers put the kibosh on a fifth film they were planning called Batman Triumphant, with ever floating names like Nicolas Cage or Jeff Goldblum being Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, and there was going to be a elaborate nightmare sequence involving Jack Nicholson returning as the Joker during a fear-induced episode, and oh, Madonna was going to be in it as Harley Quinn, the daughter of Jack Napier in this version. So let's wrap your head around that one.
Fucked up the relationship canon with Barbara Gordon, so what the hell? Why not?
But yeah, the point is though is that that was almost going to happen, and it had the name Batman Triumphant, and it just never got off the ground. And I think at this point, studio heads have changed. I think they thought these superhero movies were getting way too costly. They're already having a hard time with their Superman getting off the ground to the point that I think Batman and Robin's failure ended up killing Superman Lives as a collateral.
It's just a damn shame. It's like I know it would have been weird and different, but is it really that bad? And I've seen the documentary. I honestly think I could see the heart of it. I still to this day think they could salvage that script to be like an animated adaptation. Like just get the voices to did Nick Cage is honest to God not like opposed the idea of coming back. I mean hell he actually even did come back to eventually voice a Superman in a Teen Titans Go movie. But the
and
point
he
is being
and he did lend his likeness to that scene in The Flash. Although I think he filmed something real,
uh
and he was rather upset that they ended up not using any of the real stuff he filmed because he actually put on a super suit and everything. But then they ended up just doing a deep fake CGI version, which even he was like, I don't think I remember shooting any of that. Basically,
yeah. Did we actually do a I can't remember if we did a video on Flash, but man, I regret anything I said anything good about that movie during knowing how skeezy Warner Brothers was handling that thing.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean the Reeves estate stuff. I mean, I think that's a black mark on an otherwise very good movie. I mean, I think the Kara stuff is great. Barry is surprisingly nuanced with his double roles. Keaton is great back in the saddle. Like, there's a lot of great stuffs, and it's like if you're watching a kid's recital or your a favorite a nice play that you're like really getting into, and all of a sudden someone decides to like drop a projector screen and show you their big computer generated AI meme to say, "Hey, look what we did over here for fun," and right in the middle of you getting caught up in the drama. I think that's the best way to describe that controversial scene in Flash. Like on one hand, it's kind of cool to see Christopher Reeve make a kind of hello wave by, but I think you could have done the same effect, literally just having like cut reused footage from the actual Donner films playing on the surface of the world to let you know, oh, that's Superman world. Oh, that's Keaton's world. Like all that stuff. You didn't actually have to just go and make these recreations of them. And the fact, like I said, Nick Cage admitted that they ended up using a deep fake version of him that he wasn't all too keen on. Because like I said, he did say I did get to put on the old suit. It still fit. I mean, I wonder if pictures exist, but he did say he came in for a day to do something, and then when he saw the final product, he was like, ah, he just no man. And when you do that to Nick Cage, come
It
on.
really helps someone goes back to fix it or something. But we're way off topic here. So yeah, the Batch franchise is pretty much dead. So how are we supposed to get this back? Maybe we could get someone fresh in to put in your perspective. Someone maybe that's kind of nuanced in knowing how to handle a superhero franchise, or like understanding comic book lore and all that. Actually, no.
Let's go with an auteur.
And that's our Batman movie. Oh, this could only go so well.
You know what's funny is before Nolan, there was another big Darren Aronofsky, who wrote like surrealist films like The Fountain and stuff, was tapped to do a Batman movie. And from what I heard from people who read what he had written, it was a head trip. It was been radically different than anything we would have ever seen before. But that shows you where Warner Brothers was at. Rather than try to continue and milk the dead horse they already beat to death by accident, they figured, let's go ahead and do the unthinkable. Let's reboot, because even the Superman films that followed were trying hard to still stay in continuity with the Donner films and so on and so forth. I mean, have you ever heard of a franchise like that had a string of successful movies and they decided to say, you know what, let's pretend all that stuff never happened and start fresh? It happened probably a couple of times, but it was probably unheard of with a thing as big as Batman.
But yeah, so we got Christopher Nolan, who up until this point was mostly known for stuff like Memento, the kind of like surreal stuff that kind of is.
It,
Well, I think for Nolan always likes to do like those types of movies where they're kind of like out of place timeline, and you kind of have to piece things together. I mean, he does it again in Dunkirk, so.
and then he had Insomnia, that film that featured Robin Williams in a dark role. You know, whereas Al Pacino playing a sleepless detective who had screwed up somewhere, getting stationed in Alaska, and having to follow up some murders in a place on during the time of the year when Alaska has longer sun rises. So even at night, it's considered day. So that's why it's called Insomnia, because he hardly gets sleep throughout the movie. And I think that's the project that made Warner Brothers saying, "Hey, would you like to take a crack at Batman?" And at first, he was thinking, "Well, why did you want me to do Batman films? Like, I think those are interesting films per se, but that's not something that you would expect from his filmography at the time, following Memento and Insomnia." But he did say, well, has anybody ever talked about the beginnings of Batman? Because he said, well, if I'm going to do this character, what was his origins like? So then they took him to DC and gave him Batman school, basically. And then he realized, has anyone actually really covered the origin? Like, and in the back of his mind, he's hearing all this stuff. It's fascinating him, and he's thinking, well, how can you do this in a way that would feel like it could happen, but also elevate the mythology without going too fantastical? I'm pretty sure with how expensive the previous films became, like trying to get in super crazy elements, I'm sure Warner Brothers was trying to say, okay, do this, but do this on the cheap, probably. Oh no, they didn't really cheap out. They just were worried. He had a vision to go, let's make this something that could be based in reality, but still honor the page. That was like his approach to it.
Funny enough, I was kind of scrolling through just to kind of get breeze up on like background and themes and all that. Apparently, one of his inspirations of how to handle Batman Begins was it's it's kind of funny to bring it up, but it thinking upon it, it kind of makes sense. He literally took cues from Richard Donner's Superman,
Uh huh. Exactly.
and it's like, well, isn't Richard Donner's Superman kind of mystical and has that otherworldly thing? And to some extent, yeah. I mean, it was supposed to be evoking the golden and silver age of the comic book lore, but even then, at a point, it does kind of come down to a sense of realism, bringing Superman into basically like, it was the Bronze Era comics when the movie came out,
And
and there
basically,
was like this bombastic feeling of like the world, how would the world react if like a being like Superman arrived, and how his uh, powers and effect would kind of ripple across
yeah, and
in a
don't forget the tagline for that movie is, "You will believe a man can fly," and you do, because at that point, his flying was considered kind of hokey because it was either animated or done against a side cloud thing. With all respect to the George Reeves films and those other shorts, but this was the first time I felt like, wow, this was actually happening in front of the screen. And I can see why that approach would appeal to Nolan. And in fact, people ask, well, didn't they try to make Batman real with the Burton films and such? Well, Burton was always going for that more larger than life heightened feel of stuff. I mean, his Gotham is a
And
nightmare.
it's it's Tim Burton. You know Tim Burton doesn't like to do realistic things, and even stuff that he does kind of have it set in real world. It's always going to be a little bit of twinge of the fantastical. Like goodness sake, Big Fish literally has like this ethereal kind of backyard place.
Isn't there a werewolf in
I
that
don't know.
movie, if I remember correctly? There is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly my point. But with Richard Donner, it was like the only fantastical element is that we have an alien that is shot from Krypton and lands on Earth, and he is like the absolute single most miraculous thing that would be happening to Earth. Like this being that could just come up as if when any form of disaster or crime or trouble occurs, that he is able to come in, swoop down and help with the good good wholesome smile on his face and able to give a good salute and hand wave to person that are people are doing their jobs.
Yeah, like stopping a whole heist with the boats, getting a cat out of a tree for a little girl, catching a helicopter in midair, helping Air Force One land. The point is, like that's the thing. But everyone else is treating it like when you're not watching Superman. Sometimes when you watch those scenes, you kind of forget you're watching a Superman film until he flies in because you're thinking, wow, I'm watching like a disaster airplane movie from the '70s when Air Force One loses a wing. But then in comes Superman to save the day. Or oh shit, I'm watching like a towering inferno style movie when the helicopter's going to crash and everyone's like, oh my god, look out! And then oops, Superman comes in to save the day from being a somber film. The cop scene looks like something out of the French Connection when they're all shooting and blasting each other, and then they're over there counting their money like it's the Great Escape, and all of a sudden, who's there with his red boots but Superman? So you can see what Donner's talking about.
And so I guess Nolan took a look at that and thought, okay, so we can be able to make it real, but we could also uh, bring up the uh, Bruce Wayne or Batman takes up this mythology. He builds the mythology to kind of elevate himself to make himself seem bigger in Gotham rather than just a guy that's just with fancy tech, a lot of money, and a lot of family issues, taking on the crime families and crooks and criminals in Gotham.
Because that was the thing, is that you could argue that the comic books, the animated series, that actually the best way to describe this would be I'll talk about it later is the Gotham Knights shorts they made in between Batman Begins and Dark Knight, where from each different story, Batman becomes a larger than life figure to the point where he's not described as human by some people. Like the best one is I got the great story to tell you is when you got these three kids who all saw the same crime with some robber, and they all had a different view of what came. Like someone saw this shadowy figure that was like almost untouchable. Another saw like this monstrous vampire bat thing that was doing hard hits against this guy. Someone even saw him as a sort of robot, like almost an Iron Man figure. And those can all apply to Batman due to the techniques he uses. That you can see why different people would see him in different eyes.
Exactly. Also, by the way, I really love that uh, anthology film for Gotham Knight. I think that's like kind of outside of the other DC animated movies that kind of had a little bit of a loose connection to them. That one being able to stand on its own, it kind of be an unofficial interquel between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight is actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think my favorite short from that one is Deadshot. I think. Although I do like
Oh
in
yeah, the last one.
although I do like in Darkness Dwells as well, with the Scarecrow and Killer Croc in a very crazy way.
I think those two shorts are actually by the same studio. Different art style, but they were still the same
I
studio.
just love that you can tell the guy who did Helsing did Deadshot because Deadshot is dressed to the nines like a Helsing agent, like he's someone Alucard would be hunting.
Neat.
Yeah, but yeah, so I can see their approach. So, but it's very funny how he had a vision and he has a team he usually works with, and he got those guys and tried to apply realistic settings to these things, but also still have a bit of the larger than life qualities. Because he didn't want to go like too toy commercial, but he didn't want to go too like it's magic that some of the stuff works. Some of it is movie trickery, but most of it is him trying to be in camera as possible to try to say, if a guy with enough know-how and tech really had a mind to do this, it could probably work like this. That was the idea, the driving force behind all of it. But yeah, he also centered on comics. A lot of comics that told the early years, and in those books, sometimes they would go into detail about Batman saying, I'm too slow this way. Maybe I should have lighter armor. I can glide this way." Like basically, when Batman is learning the ropes, so Batman learning the ropes is helping Nolan learn the ropes to say, "What would I like to put in my movie for a young man who's starting up to do this crime fighting stuff?"
I suppose we could actually talk a little bit about basically what the premise is. So, well, unless you've been living under a rock for God knows how long, you know how it goes. You have a young Bru- Bruce Wayne, 8-year-old, who, after a very hectic day of getting jumped by bats from falling in a cave and having a traumatic episode that triggered from an operatic play that has the devilish bats to kind of swarm and circulate to trigger him. He leads his family out into the alley where they are jumped by a desperate criminal, and tragedy ensues where both his parents are tragically shot down in front of him. And years later, we actually see him in present day, where he is basically like a nomad, basically in prison in a different land, trying to just get into the criminal mind element, trying to figure out how criminals work, think. And he's approached by a stranger named Ducard, who offers him a pathway, essentially a way to guide his vengeance, or well, even Bruce says vengeance doesn't matter to me. What he wants is justice. And so he is brought into the League of Shadows to help hone his anger and tragedy into a fiercer weapon where he is able to learn like ninja-based skills, the art of theatricality, deception, trickery, able to stand toe to toe against 10 men, even 100 men at one point. Unfortunately, the League of Shadows has darker intentions, and Bruce leaves to make his own way to set up, essentially being a mythological figure, knowing in his past, trying to take his vengeance on Joe Chill, it went sideways and learned a very valuable lesson that even as a man who supposedly thinks he has nothing left to lose, he does have a lot of people to lose, like lifelong friend Rachel Dawes, or his surrogate father slash trustworthy butler Alfred. As long as a man has something to lose, they're pretty much powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bruce Wayne decides to help build up his own legacy, his own identity as a mythological creature of the night, something that can instill fear into those that prey on the fearful, the desperate. A figure known simply as the Batman.
Mm-hmm. So you could say this is Batman beginning.
I do wonder if that title was what Chris Nolan wanted intended, considering that his later titles kind of are simplified more The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think it's Warner Bros. Saying like, no, this is a clean slate. This is a new beginning.
All right. But yeah, so the what was I gonna say on that note? But yeah, so yeah, we talk about his origin, and there are a couple of actual major books that were a huge influence um, on how Nolan approached this movie. One of the biggest ones being Frank Miller's Year One. Back then, when Frank Miller didn't lose his meds and actually was able to write a decent Batman story. By the way, that's why I laughed when he said Bruce Wayne, age 8, because it made me think of Aspar's hilarious description for Robin every time he pops up.
Grayson, age 12.
God, I got you can tell we're watchers of Top the Fourth Wall because we'll make a reference to that out of nowhere. So, but yeah, Frank also approached that world of like he did it in an interesting way where he would it wasn't through Batman's eyes primarily, even though he was the central character. It was through the eyes of Sergeant Gordon, who was the only honest cop in Gotham, as everyone around him is being deceitful, duplicitous, or too scared to do the right thing. And
So we're obviously not blind to being like, oh, Frank Miller is like God and everything and that, but when the dude writes a good story, there are good stories. It's, don't get our words twisted, but essentially he kind of approached Batman in a way that's kind of he wanted to kind of just like strip Batman down to its essence. Like what is Batman at its core? It's basically a man that's broken, gone through tragedy, and just looked at the world and said, "No, enough is enough. I want to actually make sure that this never happens. I want to see justice actually done to people and not get away with blackmail or crime or being duplicitous or being scared to do anything." And decided to take on essentially kind of reforged himself. The absolute crux that every Batman fan will tell you is that Bruce Wayne, in actuality, died at the age of 8 or whatever particular age the writer will make the backstory, because that was pretty much the end of their childhood when you lose your something you hold so dear and close to you, and in its place is actually a figure that's like seeking validation and a point of like dispensing justice, a figure that is pretty much elevated in a way that sees themselves as dispensable, but sees everyone else needing to be feel safe. Essentially, Linkara even said it best that Batman's ultimate goal is that he is willing to make sure that no child, like age 10 or younger, would ever undergo the same tragedy that befell him.
But like I think it is true that you look at the Trinity, they all have an ideal that fully embodies them. Superman is, of course, hope. Wonder Woman is truth. And I think Batman is described as justice.
That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so and that's the point is because Batman, like I think Joker's whole crux of against Batman is the fact that, he's one personal tragedy away from being as crazy as him and being a menace to society. But rather than Batman let himself fall into that, he is able to Batman is able to turn that into a struggle for a better tomorrow. And that's why I think Frank Miller saw that, and even in his what people might consider more hardcore cynical Dark Knight Returns, Batman still never lost that drive for justice. He ended up getting hard on himself for giving up. That's why he has those monologues calling him weak and soft and whatever. But you can still see the same drive. He's got a pure drive to him. That's why he disregards Superman, who he thought just become a stooge of the government in his eyes, and that's why they have that clash at the end over ideals rather than anything really major. But like I think the best scene that encapsulates Batman is when Gotham goes to hell because of an EP blast knocking out electricity, so crime is running rampant, and they got looters and stuff, and there's these sons of Batman guys who took inspiration from Batman, trying to be like anarchy and everything, and he actually grabs their guns, saying that this is the weapon of the enemy. We will not be using this. Like that scene of Batman on a horse is one of the best scenes in that storyline. But some of that stuff inspires this and everything like that. So that I guess I'm not too far off the bat talking about that. But yeah, like we said, and Frank Miller can write well for Batman as well. That's why when you hear him try to make stuff like Holy Terror, and he still sticks in Batman characters, but give him a slightly different coat of paint so they can say, hey, this is actually a new character, but you still see the Batman archetypes. It's pretty funny that I think Don Darnacle is still just Gordon 100%. Which, going back to the top of the fourth wall, when he's talking about funny walking, I love that the panel drawing Garner was his like leg up in the eye, and he says apparently this guy walks like this, and he's like doing the can while walking. You remember that one? but I love how that guy is Gordon. Yeah, go on.
But aside from uh, any Frank Miller's works and especially Batman Year One, there are some other illusions. I think I think in, they do kind of take a little bit of cues from the original movies. Mostly how they handle. uh Alfred and Bruce's relationship, where Bruce is kind of like trying to have an idea or a direction to push, and Alfred will always kind of like steer him in the right direction, or have a poignant uh, idea or talk to give him that distinction. And you could also say there is also a little bit in some of the uh in mostly like the darker episodes of Batman the Animated Series, where they show like uh Gotham at its uh seedier underbellies, or even handling the crime families and all that.
Yeah, you're
I
one.
I, also,
Oh, oh.
I do think also that they look to Mask of the Phantasm for some of the build up, especially with the Bruce's prototype uh bat suit look,
Yes.
where he doesn't have the the bat mask yet. He has just the ski mask and uh his proto suit essentially.
I think another big influence was a short story called "The Man Who Falls," where Batman has a fall, and I think he has a flashback to when he fell as a kid. So that was the inspiration for that. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like good Batman history. I think even Long Halloween makes a few shout outs. Long Halloween influences Dark Knight even more, but yeah. Point is though, Nolan knew what he was basically taking every Batman story that there ever was and boiling it down to something so raw that he could work with it to say, okay, this is how I'm going to shape it.
But uh doing that needs a cast, and of course, a big question a lot of people probably had when they heard an announcement of a Batman movie coming is, who is going to be the Dark Knight? Who is going to be uh, the the detective of Gotham City?
Yeah,
And
and they
I
tested
can
a
see
lot.
Jones looking at the names.
So I mean, it's because there's they screen tested a lot of stuff to make this work. But point is though is that I remember reading about this when I bought my Star Wars Episode 3 cover of Starlog that says "Face to Face with Darth Vader" and it shows Hayden Christensen with the fiery background behind him. And that's why I bought it. But they also talked about how Batman Begins was happening, and that's how I first found out. Oh wait, we're getting a new Batman movie. But
Found out by just seeing a trailer for one of the movies being showcased.
and then oh man, so what happened is I remember this. They said that another inspiration from the Nolan, I mean, from the Donner era is the fact that I think even Spider Man followed this thing. You take established, well regarded, well known actors in all the big supporting roles because there's a lot of stacked people here. We'll talk about them, and you put someone who is maybe not too history with the audience, but still enough that you know they got the chops to make this work. But you don't want them to be like, oh hey, it's that guy from this being that. You want it to be like this character owns that because that was the same thing Donner said with Superman. He didn't want to have Robert Redford or Brando. I mean, Brando was already going to be Jarrell, but he didn't want Robert Redford or any other young hotshot at the time to be. Oh look, it's that guy being in Superman cape. He said, I want people to go and see Superman. So I think Nolan wanted someone with a bit of a who can do a dual role because in his I think the thing that he liked too was the duality. He liked how he was one way with as Bruce Wayne, but Batman as a complete other, and he saw that it wasn't that one was replacing the other. It was just that you know he was really looking for someone who can pull off both because there was some in the screen test there were guys who can get the Bruce Wayne stuff right, but their Batman wasn't quite up to snuff, or their Batman was actually pretty good, but they didn't quite do the Playboy act well either. So it was like you had to find someone who could do both and both effectively.
Especially consider the fact that in actual truth, the character is actually three. There's Bruce Wayne, the billionaire playboy, is kind of aloof. He's kind of got a little bit of a snarky attitude about him. He's got he's a figure face essentially. It's like he's altruistic, but he'll also be like having a dame of the week as his date every time he's going to a gala or a premiere or anything like that.
Yeah,
Then you have the Batman, the man that's out in uh, causing the criminal underworld to feel a lot of pain in every piece of all their 267 bones in their body.
Yeah.
And
So
then you have the third persona who's actually um Bruce, like completely like himself. There's no facade. He's not dressed up, but he's like you'll find him in the Batcave, like discussing, like strategizing how to handle like all this and having to like balance his work life and his duties as Batman.
all right. So they okay. So I think that's the best way to start. Let's start with the big man himself, Batman. So. Before we get to who we talked about, I want to show this. This won't get us in trouble because it's on YouTube, so I don't think we're gonna have a repeat of the Jurassic incident. And I'll play it. So yeah,
It was.
I'll do
And
it.
if you show anything, it's to be fair, it could be worse. It could be NBC Universal.
Yeah, but wait, the thing is that I remember reading this that Bale said they gave him one of the old Kilmer suits, the Panther suits. He was wearing that, and he said that I went with my first instinct. I wanted to go like this guy is so much full of anger. So he was like almost like a wild animal, like bursting out of human skin. So that was his idea to the point where when he showed the screen to his wife afterwards, he says, "You look like a madman. I'm not going to take you for that." And it turns out that was the relative. I'm going to leave his test for last actually. And so the other guys they tried. So believe it or not, we'll get back to him. But this fella, Cillian Murphy, from 28 Days Later fame, and a few other British productions, was screen test for Bruce Wayne and Batman. So here he is.
Who was with Falcone at the docks?
And then
Joe murdered my parents, and they deserve.
Don't pretend you wanted to do this for them.
so it didn't last too long, but they meant, I mean, in the screen test because they were talking about all of Cillian Murphy. So I think they said that his Batman had the intensity, but they said that his Bruce Wayne seemed a little disturbed, like a little like you can see it in the delivery that it didn't quite. But they liked him enough that even though he didn't get cast as Bruce Wayne in Batman, they still kept him to be the antagonist in Crane. So I guess and Killian would go on to work with Nolan a lot. He was in Dunkirk, and as mentioned before, he helped him win the Oscar for Oppenheimer. To the point where we were watching this movie and we saw Cillian Murphy, we were like, "Damn, he was baby faced in this one." So
Exactly. So, what were the other names?
this is, I mean, and this screen just only has a handful of people. But this is Eon Bailey, and his Bruce Wayne is fine. I remember seeing this, but his Batman is not.
Happy birthday, Bruce.
There he
Oh,
is.
Mr. Earl. Good of you to come. Not everybody thought you'd make it this far.
Sorry to disappoint.
Who was with Falcone at the docks?
I don't know, I swear to God.
Swear to me!
I think he plays a little more straight, like very much very much like any other superhero would. I think if anything, Eon Bailey probably would have made a great Captain America back then. But thank you, Chris Evans, for stepping up. But yeah, so here is Christian Bale's test, where I think it gave him what they wanted. So he's like,
Cobb.
right here.
It was Cobb. Look, we need to go. We need to tell
Rest. Gordon knows. Gotham needs you.
And you serve Gotham?
I serve justice. It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. Trouble.
Nothing I can't handle.
Oh, say that again?
I said it was kind of funny that they got to use a Keaton bat suit for the screen test.
Yeah.
He knows who was at the docks.
He won't talk.
He'll talk to me. Who was with Falcone at the docks?
I don't know, I swear to God.
Swear to me.
What in God's name are you?
I'm Batman.
You can see why some people thought, wow, you were a little intense, Christian. And, yeah, I think that ended up working out well. I think that's what Nolan wanted, because, like he says, he wanted to have, like he says, this raw, primal, like, need for justice that has to be focused and shaped into a mythological figure. And they didn't show none of his Bruce Wayne testing, but I'm pretty sure he knew he can do it. I mean, he already played someone with issues and dual roles with American Psycho, like, 5 years prior. All right.
So
Christian Bale ended up getting the role of Batman / Bruce Wayne.
so there have been a lot of people who will try to judge who is like a better Batman as an actor, and everyone will always keep bringing up Michael Keaton and all that. And I can understand why, but at least in this movie in particular, Christian Bale, when he does Bruce Wayne, you can actually see that he really is like really pent up. He's just really been robbed of his own family, people that he's been cherished. Well, to be fair, it's mostly his relationship with his dad. The mom barely got anything, which is kind of a typical fault that Nolan seems to have when he has like female characters that don't have a particular importance in things.
Ah, yeah. Mhm.
But he was essentially robbed of his own childhood, his own sense of being able to show his father and mother what he could accomplish growing up, being able to do what they inspire him to do. And you just see in his eyes that he's just like trying to find a way, like a concrete answer to the problem of like, how can I make sure that this injustice, this cruel, unfair, distinct, absolute pitfall of a tragedy, and by huge extension, all the crimes and injustice in the city face actual consequences. Is like just like running up with the money or like putting up a fight is not gonna do that much in the long run. Like money will help it a little bit, but it's gonna bleed out in time. It's just like what the Waynes initially were able to do. They were able to put in money to help it, but they nearly got themselves bankrupt doing that.
Yeah. So, like as Batman says later, when talking to Alfred, people need dramatic examples to shout them out of apathy, and I love how Bale captures that. And the thing is that I know one of the most controversial aspects of his character is the voice when he's doing Batman, and I say in this movie he actually does it in a way that you feel it's not quite to the level that it gets mocked at later, where when you see the college humor Batman skits, that's the voice they're making fun of is the ones that come in the later movies.
Yeah, the voice when he only does that voice for like probably one instant when he's trying to scare a corrupt cop, but it's essentially you can understand that he was trying to like make sure he's heard because it's like a torrential downpour rainstorm
And
going
he
on
wanted to
in
put the fear of
his
God in this guy's eyes.
which is funny considering that he literally has God working for him as applied sciences, but we'll get to him later. But yeah, it was just only that one instance. In any other, it's when he talks, it's kind of more like he's finally channeling his anger into like a persona, something that's going to like give that thing a face, an identity,
because
essentially.
to this day, fans will still tell you to this day the best Batman voice ever belongs to the late great Kevin Conroy, where he was able to do these two voices from the same channel place, where he does Batman, Bruce, and public he does a more jovial and more like he's putting on a show to like people say, this is the richest man in the world, he must be so happy. And when he's more personal, he talks in a way that's more closer to his father, and you go, okay, I get that. That's the hurt well. And he goes deeper into that well, and as he deepens into the well, it deepens his own voice, and he gets that gravitas, that rage, that channeled rage into the perfect voice that gets to declare, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman. And Kevin Conroy just nailed that. So when it comes to if we're doing every Batman iteration ever, I think it wouldn't be a fair contest if Kevin's involved, because he'll take the top every damn time. Rest in peace, Kevin. We miss you every year.
He was also one of us in the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue a counterpoint that yes, Kevin is pretty good, especially in the animated series. However, there was some points in the later years where the writers and directors were kind of like only focused on the Batman part. They didn't want the whole nuance. They didn't want to hear his emotions and all that. Even I think the worst example that even Linkara pointed out, again from a touch for a while, is in the Killing Joke, where they just basically
Oh my god.
just have Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy just doing their voices in a story that's really not written or meant for their versions of the characters. It's basically just like, well, this is the best Joker voice, this is the best Batman voice. Let's put him in a story where Batman and Joker are in it, even though there's clearly a distinct different tone that's handling with these two. Where in like the TV show, the Joker was like flamboyant, jovial, but also with a little bit of a cynical snide to him. And if he, when he gets enraged, he like really like throws off his whole clown persona shtick. Or especially when his life is in danger, he'll be freaking out, even calling out help for Batman. And per
Joker's
se with
favor.
Batman, when even though he is dark and brooding, he's also like always open to reaching out to helping people. He literally went out of his way to help Harley Quinn out on her day off, knowing that she has been like a huge accomplice of the Joker, but even she like deserves having a simple outing to just be able to enjoy trying to fit into society, even though society keeps constantly bashing her into it. And he even reached out and said, I can understand what it's like. I had a bad day once myself."
So I think
Like this is supposed to be the man that's supposed to be like a hard, stern defender of justice, but also understands these guys are just as broken as I am.
mhm.
If things had gone differently, I might be in their positions too,
And
but
it's
I am not, and I'm the defining example of what they have the potential to be.
And it's not like they had lost their edge because they had done those characters well at that point in the Arkham games with that much nuance in it too. So it's not like they lost their touch after not doing it for years. They were doing it up to that point. It's just that the material didn't fit what they were trying to make their voices do. In fact, if they had written it differently to be better suited to their voices, it probably would have flown a little better. But back to
It's not to say everyone like mishandled Kevin Conroy's voice. Like there's like a distinct episode in Justice League actually where the characters were swapped around and Batman ended up being in the body of Stargirl, and even though he kind of has the whole thing situation under handle, he does at one point have a moment where he kind of his voice kind of inflects that he is basically in a teenage body and having all the hormones and just like, yeah, I know, isn't it great?
wow.
It's like that's the point. It's like, thank you. Where was that Kevin Conroy performance that we've been like for years being denied of?
Yeah, because you're right. After Justice League, I think Batman season 3 and Ultimate, they just kept him in that very angry mode, like even more than his Batman Beyond voice. Where
At least you can understand because the dude is a grumpy old man, and
where
that's what grumpy old man should
and
be.
tragedy happened to him to the point where you get why he is the way he is. So, that's why I love that bit when Batman meets Batman in that Batman Beyond and Justice League crossover, where both Bruces see each other and Terry's just having a trip. And he's like, "Man, I was so reckless. Man, I got so old." Basically, they were both down talking each other. Okay, but Bale, sorry. Point is though, Christian Bale was able to get a lot of nuances in his performance that really, like you said, captured the playboy persona when he's talking about like a guy who has bat clearly has issues, dressed like a bat. Like he plays up that whole deal, but he also plays up the whole like when he's talking to Rachel, you get a little more of that like what he is actually like underneath. And then when he's talking to Alfred, that's a much more personal voice too, where Alfred is his most trusted figure. He can tell him everything about what he's planning and everything like that. And then you got the stern, just defender with Batman. So again, he was able to balance it in a way where you buy that they're all the same guy, but with lots of layers, and it made him feel a little more real, if that makes any sense.
How Christian Bale handles doing Batman, like it might be a mixture between like stunt performance and him, but he definitely got trained to be able to show Batman handling a fight. Where in the previous movies, he was able to put up a fight, but also he kind of relied on his tools of the trade, his tech, and all that. Here, this is a guy that's really like a single guy that's in his middle of the circle of at least like 13 to 15 guys like ganging up on him, and he's able to like take him down effortlessly.
Just to give you an idea of how about craziness that this whole thing is, that when he was cast and everything like that, he was in the middle of doing a film called The Machinist, and he was famous for his character was to be like a conspiracy guy who eventually he lived in rather anemic proportions. Like the guy was a walking scarecrow, if that made any sense. He lost a lot of weight, and yet he had to put on a lot of weight afterwards to be Batman. Where he made a joke saying, "I was getting so big, really big, to the point where I got as big as a bear. To the point where even the crew during the screen was like, God damn, Chris, are we doing Batman or Fat Man?" So he said he had to get it back down to a reasonable weight. But just to show you, I'm going to send you a picture. I'm not going to put it on the screen, but just to show you a picture. Uh, I'm surprised if he did a screen test while weighing like this, then goodness, that suit must have really covered. Because look at this, you can see the ribs.
My God.
And even more famous is this image that it goes viral. But yeah, he dropped like, damn, he slept for 2 hours straight to play an Insomniac. So, point is though is that yeah, he was trying to like get in. He's a method actor sometimes. So he was really trying to get into that space. But you see this, and you're like, and he had to be Batman like a year after finishing this. So that's why he said he put on a lot of weight afterwards. And he said later like he got too big, so to do the stunts. So he had to like kind of get down to the weight and figure we see him for in the physique. So he does do the physicality pretty well, where you could buy like okay, because Batman has always been described as the peak of physical human fitness you can get without being from Krypton or anything. Like he's not a bodybuilder, but he made his body as strong as he can make it for the long job he's going to do.
Exactly. And he, at times, he'll always keep like discussing because everybody was there are characters across the story. It's like, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to like push yourself? Why can't you be able to do good for the city as Bruce Wayne? And he always keep going from the heart to explain that he really feels that he needs to really, really shake up the norm. He really needs people to. He kind of almost inadvertently takes the line from Falcone where, like, you always fear what you don't understand. Well, he wants to be something that's not understandable. Like, a single man who's, like, driven so much to the point where he'll dress himself up as a figure in essence, the very animal that he's actually afraid of, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, to deliver that fear that he had growing up and put it out onto the rest of the city and shake the citizens out of their apathy to give them like someone to have a hope that someone is going to be coming around the dark corners that they're going to be cornered in to get them to a safer night.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like I said though, there's a lot of talk about being a symbol, being an mythology, because the idea is that he's even told by Ducard that a man is flesh and blood. He could be destroyed, he could be corrupted, he can fall, he can everything. But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you commit yourself to an ideal, you become a legend. And he decided to become bigger. You must become more than a man in the eyes of your opponent, and he uses that all to his thing. Now, one big thing that sticks with him is his strong moral compass when he's tasked in the League of Shadows to go ahead and execute a man who was in trouble for killing a guy to steal his land, and he kept him there during his entire training. Now he's telling him, your final test is to murk this guy. He steadfast said, no, I will bring justice, I will stop him, I will make him answer for his crimes, but I will not just be an executioner. That was like, he says, the one thing that separates you from any common criminal, because if I think it's the Frank Castle argument, because some people like to say, well, Batman would be more effective if he was like Punisher, taking out his bad guys down for good. But there's always a fine line. Like Punisher can do it because the monsters he puts down are usually way worse than he was. But in any other normal circumstance, the Punisher we would admit, yeah, what I do is not for the sane. And Batman is probably thinking, there are other ways. Mm-hmm.
And also to like put a fine point on it, when Punisher was introduced, he was introduced to be kind of like an anti-figure. He was supposed to be like an obstacle for Spider-Man. He didn't debut as his own thing. He debuted as a figure that Spider-Man had to deal with. He was supposed to be like the antithesis of Spider-Man, who also fell through tragedy, but decided to take the power to have the responsibility to understand that he has the power to bring justice down and bring uh, finality to it. Like even to the fact that he tracked down his own uncle's killer and was ready to put him down, but once he realized, wait, this is a guy that I let past me. If I had at least taken the responsibility to stop him when I had the chance, my Uncle Ben wouldn't have died. So he realized that the notion of putting a final end to someone is not going to change the fact that he let this guy get away and let someone he loved died. And so Batman is also kind of the same idea. It's like for years he always like his how to handle the origin. Most of the origins pick that the family usually kind of walk it out after seeing a full viewing of Zorro. But in here and to Nolan's note, making kind of omitting Zorro kind of finalizes the notion that this is in his world there is no other superheroes. There's no one else that's inspired to do like the cape and cowl and all that
So no gray ghost.
nonsense. Yeah, the Grey Ghost or anything like that. You know, in his world, he's like triggered by the opera that his family went to, and he asks them to kind of leave early. And he always felt like if I hadn't like been scared about that, if I had like taken a moment to just kind of like push through that, or at least did something, maybe like waited or something, maybe my family would actually be alive or anything. But even Ducard kind of points out like it's not your parents' death is not your fault. Of course, he would also kind of insist that it was his father's fault for not having the will to do anything, even though they were literally like dead to rights, like being held at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I says though, and I love how even Ducard tells him just because you're angry doesn't change the fact that your father couldn't act. I mean, ask Zack Snyder what happens if Thomas Wayne tries to act. He still gets murked.
Yeah. In fact, they also kind of touched that in that one Trinity episode in Justice League Unlimited where they got the Black Desire rose for Superman, where it gets latched on to Batman, and he gets the dream of like, well, what if my father was able to put up a fight, and he's able to see that, but unfortunately they had to remove that out of him, and he sees like you can see in the shadows where his father kind of loses the fight and ends up dying anyways.
So yeah, like so if Ducard is full of crap if you're telling him the will to act would have changed anything. It was not it's sometimes I don't know like it says, but yeah, his strong sense of moral imperative really drives this Batman. That's what makes him different. So I know people like to say, oh, this really over.
Also,
yeah, go on.
well, I didn't want to like you go on and finish your point because
I think some people will say that this movie really hit home. The Batman doesn't kill rule to the point of almost parody, but no. I mean, I know people like to point out to early issues. Batman's killed before. He killed that one guy by hanging him from his Batcopter and so on and so forth. Dropped a guy in acid, but even they admitted, okay, if we want this guy to be our hero, we kind of gotta scale him back a bit, thanks to the comics code and stuff like that. And I know people will go with movies, but we saw Batman flamethrower a guy with his Batmobile and drop a bomb in a factory full of thugs, but again, different approaches. I think that the animated series obviously had to have that no killer rule just because of the cartoons, but also it really made him such a strong moral character, because we have seen issues and Elseworlds where Batman goes off the handle and decides to murk everybody, and you're like, it's not a pretty sight. I mean, it's like the same thing with what's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Now that I think about it,
the Superman story where he has to deal with beings that have all the power and decide, why should we just constantly have to bandage and repair the world when we could just literally just cut the cancer out. Let's just kill off all the leaders and hope that and just put ourselves in power. Say, hey, we're the ones in charge. Get in line, or else you're gonna be feeling the pain.
Oof, yeah. God, some people
But
think it's
take
so
it back to
easy.
Batman. Take it back to Batman. In this movie, they also kind of do take a little bit. They added a flashback moment where Bruce Wayne is actually adamant to see his parents' killer dead. To the point that he packed a small revolver in his coat pocket and was willing to go and give him a gesture. Of course, that vengeance was robbed from him by a Falcone thug who just kind of came in and decided to put Joe Chill out of his misery. And then once he admitted to Rachel that he was intending to like put Joe down, Rachel like furiously says, "Your father would literally be ashamed," like doing the same tactic that killed him.
Mm-hmm. So
It was at that moment where Bruce throws that gun into the water where he realized, like, no, I am not going to be the next Joe Chill. I am actually going to be something else.
like, he even goes up to Falcone and tries to, like, talk about how, oh yeah, I'm not afraid of you. But that's when Falcone tells him, yeah, you didn't think about people you know, and you don't understand this world. And even Batman admits that. Bruce admits, yeah, he was just full of anger, but he didn't know what he was dealing with. That's why he left behind his identity. He left behind everything so he can try to go find himself and find what he's looking for in terms of, like, the criminal mind, what drives people. Like, even he did some crimes so he can, like, not starve or even learn, okay, this is what they feel like, this is what they do. But he admitted he always held strong to himself. He said he never became one of them. So that was like, because he was right. He was afraid because he didn't understand. So like when Falcone tells him that you never really tasted desperate. You've never really you've been born with a silver spoon in your mouth, and even he admits, well, yeah, because when Rachel takes him to the seedy underbelly of Gotham to see that, yeah, things have been worse than ever down here, but people talk about it like it's history and it's not. So like they say, look beyond your own pain, because for a while he was like pissed off and like, man, like even he would even brush off his trusted father figure in Alfred to say like, no, I'm not here for a while, like saying it's you're doing your father's name, all that stuff. He's all like, why do you give a damn, Alfred? It's not your name, it's your father's name, and it's all that's left of him. So like, yeah, he was just too much anger. And once he eventually learned to have an appreciation for things that that from that world and everything like that. He didn't cast it all aside for anger and stuff like that.
And also, I'll take a moment to give a big kudos to Christian Bale portraying Batman that's just kind of starting out. Like, I know it's the big joke across the internet is that Batman is like prepared for everything. They give him enough prep time, he'll be able to take down Thanos, Darkseid, and
Goku.
freaking Omni-Man with his hand tied behind his back. But of course, this is supposed to be a title called "The Batman Begins," and the Batman is going to make a lot of mistakes, like his ordering a cow that turns out the graphite is not up to code, so he has to make sure he doesn't land on his head, or else it's gonna give him quite a headache. And always has to like kind of like give himself a cape so he can be able to glide across buildings, because jumping freeform it's not going to be comfortable.
Hey, like you said,
Or even the fact where he faces Jonathan Crane, he gets jumped on because he kind of let himself get into the moment in a tight space. He forgot his rule of like always mind your surroundings.
oh yeah, you're right. That is why he gets jumped. Huh. But yeah, so
And basically, like, we're able to see Christian Bale portrays a Batman who's like is a force of nature, but he's kind of like unrefined. He's kind of still trying to find his footing. He's still remembering his lessons and learning from his mistakes and doing himself to become this figure that's this legend that is going to get a bat signal that's going to shoot up across the sky, and everyone, criminal and innocent, will look up and know who that symbol is for.
mm-hmm. So he does a good job with that, and yeah, like I said, we mentioned before, the voice isn't as over the top as it is, because I know the noise now is I'm not wearing hockey pads is the thing now, but It wasn't that bad. The only time he did it, like, again, was to like scare the crap out of Flash with the "swear to me," and that was the only time it gets that bad. But although I do love the college humor inspired, Batman skit where he's trying different voices on Flash to the point where he gets so frustrated he blows his voice out and ends up getting stuck with the actual smoking voice.
Yeah. So we kind of covered Christian Bale pretty good. We move on to
One more thing
like,
on him.
one of the big. What? Okay.
For years, my dad's favorite Batman, when we say who's your favorite Batman in movies, because everybody has a favorite. It's like who's your favorite James Bond or who's your favorite this and that. Well, for him, he always said Michael Keaton for the longest time. And after watching Dark Knight and Batman Begins, he says in the end his favorite Batman is Christian Bale. Even when I showed him Ben Affleck and everything else afterwards, he was still going, I think I still... He said, they should have just got Christian Bale back. He said sometimes... Well, he said no. I think Christian Bale himself said, yeah. Even if they offered all the money in the world, it would take a good deal for him to even want to agree to put the cowl back on. But
who knows? Never say never. We always have Elseworlds and all that.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Moving on, we do have one of the big names. Obviously, again, as he said, Nolan was taking cues from Richard Donner's Superman, where if you want to draw an attention, you gotta draw in like big names. And one big name in particular would be Michael Caine portraying Bruce Wayne's trusted butler and, in a way, surrogate father, Alfred Pennyworth.
And I think I said without a doubt, I've seen many Alfreds and loved all the different portrayals, but this is probably my most favorite Alfred, like, bar none.
If you had a gun to my head, it'd probably be like torn between Michael Goff and oh my god, his name escapes me. The BVS one, the
Jeremy Irons.
Scar, Jeremy Irons, or he's got a little bit of a dry wit to him.
Oh yes, in your dreams.
Michael Goff kind of has the Michael Goff kind of has the an elevated self-esteem, higher functioning, but
he can still play.
definitely is willing to get his hands dirty if he intends to.
I still love his bit though. I had to inform you, sir, but Master Grayson has stolen the car. What, the Lamborghini? No, sir.
No, the other car.
The Royce? No.
No, the other car. The other car.
Yeah, but like I said though, yeah. I do love Michael Caine as thing, because I know people like to joke about how he has a speech up his ass for everything. I even made a joke saying I was a POW in a camp for 2 bloody weeks, so you're gonna hear every single word I wrote while I was stuck in there. But I joke. But the point is though is that yeah, he does offer a moral compass for Bruce to follow too, and also tell him about how you're more than just there's just the money and the name. You're a Wayne, and that means a lot, because he was good friends with Thomas and Martha Wayne, and he felt their loss when they were taken, and he probably felt very bad for Bruce too, that he had to deal with this. So, I mean, I think one of the best scenes is after the death of the parents, that you see Alfred trying to still do his butler duties like normal, and Bruce just breaks down, and then he's telling like, no, whatever happened wasn't your fault. It was all him, and he had to be the father figure then and there. And even when he allows himself some vulnerability, when he mentions I missed him, even he's all like, yeah, so do I. Michael Caine sells it. He's really good at selling this kind of thing. And I do make a joke that it does feel like his line is right for him to be like a sort of guide. Like when the Great Civil War, your great-great-grandfather helped steal slaves to the Underground Railroad, taking free slaves from the North, and I have a feeling these tunnels might have helped him. I'm like, Alfred, were you a tour guide in another life? And he still has that wit too, like the part when they want to come to a waterfall. He even says, I can see everything fine from down here, thank you very much. And he's able to like keep things funny too, because he's not completely dry, because even Michael Goff had moments of humor. And one of my favorite ones is as Selena Kyle making hasty as tell him something, a joke, a dirty limerick. One has just come to mind. He just said without missing a beat. But yeah, so the thing is that yes, he's more than just a butler of yes sir, here sir. He is a support guy. Like he's helping him work out the kinks with the with the graphite cowl, where he even mentions, like, telling him, you might need to make it a large order, to dummy corporations, so you won't get suspicion if there's just one. Oh, how many will we need? Oh, maybe 10,000.
1,000.
At least we'll
He's
have.
got spares.
Yeah, so he's really good at that. And oh god, you could tell that he does a lot with his face. Like the scene when Batman nearly gets torched by Scarecrow and gets overdosed on fear toxin. You see him just like having such a look of desperation in his face as he's trying to drive, hearing his master just fight through a hallucinogenic episode. Yeah, so like, and of course the most touching line where even you can't help but feel swelling is when he repeats a callback earlier, like when he first came back to town from college, and mentions how he's still holding out hope for Bruce to come back. He's like, "You never given up on me, have you?" He's like, "Never." So when the place is burning down, and he picks him up and he tells him the whole, "You never given up on me, haven't you?" He still says proudly, "Huh?
What's the point of all those bloody push-ups if you aren't going to be able to lift this
A bloody
single
log."
bar of wood?
Yeah, he's very good. Like it says, and he does try to keep him in the right. Like like when he scolds him for the Batmobile incident, even though he's doing it to save Rachel, and he's telling him, "I thought you said this wasn't for thrill seeking." Well, it wasn't. What do you call that then? And he's damn good television. And Alfred is right with this though. It's a miracle no one was killed, because you see some of the hits his toys do to things. You're going, if not killed, you're gonna have some blunt force trauma at least. But point is though, he makes him funny, he makes him charming, and he does feel like if you wanted someone at your side doing a crazy quest like this, it would be his Alfred, because if he would have your back, but also slap you straight if you're gonna go too far. Although I do love his bit when he mentions in this persona to change the world, you're gonna like at least have it be differentiated to avoid reprisals, right? Like what, going after Rachel? I actually said, I was talking about myself.
Yeah, Michael Caine's pretty good. He does have a sense of duty and all that, but I feel like the speechifying of the later movies kind of give me to the point where it's like, okay, we get it, dude. You got something to give for everything,
And
every situation.
They always start with sometimes or some men. Like pay attention to the speeches in the future movie. They always begin with that. Sometimes something rises from the dark. Sometimes. Well, some men aren't looking for anything logical. Some men are. It's like, well, when I was up in Burma, okay, like unprompted. Yeah, but here it's subdued enough where it's not an issue. But he's not the only other veteran member in the cast over here that is helping. I mean, obviously this is definitely a step up from him doing whatever the heck he was doing in Jaws: The Revenge, but he still jokes. You ever see the movie? No, but I did see the house that it did help buy, and it's lovely. So we got Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes, a new character originally made just for this series to kind of be Bruce's childhood friend who is the strong, idealistic light in Gotham where everything is so seedy and so scummy, yet she's still the one that believes firmly in the justice system.
I do understand that there are people that kind of say, like, well, she's kind of a little bit young to be a DA officer, is she? And to counterpoint it, it's like, she might actually just want to really be able to help. Does her being pretty or young have anything to do with wanting to do that? And I don't know. I'm just gonna like get to the point here. Unless it was like a schedule conflict for Katie to not come back, replace her with Maggie Gyllenhaal was just kind of the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel like kind of like lost a little bit of human empathy of Katie Holmes' portrayal when we got someone that looked like they didn't like sleep with the DA to get the job. But it's like, okay, but she is kind of acting a little bit aloof. She honestly kind of sounds like a different person to Bruce. Like at some point, like all of her like downsizing of Bruce is reaching a point. It's like, how are you guys actually friends exactly? I'm kind of losing the point on this one.
Yeah, like I think you could have just said that Rachel just did not end up being a factor in the movie. You could have had Maggie Gyllenhaal be someone else, but I don't know. Or like I said, though, you're right. It does feel jarring when you see Katie as she is here versus how Rachel is in the following movies, and you're like, it's like, huh? Most recasters tend to be seamless. I mean, they're not always pretty because I mean, for example, Mark Ruffalo, Edward Norton, or even Don Cheadle and Terrence Howard. But when the character can still make him feel like it works, you can get past a little recasting like that. But I don't know. You're right. Katie Holmes and Maggie's approach to Rachel is so diametrically different that you're like,
Is this even the same character?
exactly. But point is though, going back to her though, she does do it work it well because when she has to be, the friend to Bruce, it plays off well. They have a good chemistry with each other in that way. But when she has to be like the tough one, telling off Cillian Murphy about how the heck did you approve of getting this psycho in your asylum when he's dead to rights on all his crimes.
Or the fact that she's able to understand Gotham so much that she knows that she getting a little bit too close to uh something, and like someone's gonna give a hit on her, and she is no slouch. She's able to like punch off a guy with her purse and get like a taser on standby.
And yes,
But when and also I argue that she's also like another component in this uh Nolan verse, as everyone has so eloquently called this trilogy, uh to be like another pillar for Bruce's drive to doing things the right way, because she is the one that actually kind of points out like the whole system, the justice system, it is trying to work, but like there's like people in higher ups that are just kind of make things so difficult that even like there's people in the narrows that are just like trying to get by because they've been screwed up so much they're gonna get to the point where they'll become desperate, they'll become the next Joe Chill.
mm-hmm. But yeah, so she
At the point where she sees Bruce actually reveal that he intended to get so desperate to the point that he was gonna kill Joe Chill and defiant act of vengeance for losing his parents. Like she literally just loses it and just like literally slaps him not once but twice, literally, and just really feels like she thought she knew him better, but apparently, like even she said that his father would literally be ashamed if he saw him right now.
and then later when she says she tried to apologize for that, he even said, "No, no, no. What you told me was what I needed to hear. That was the truth." So, what's funny is though is that she does still get moments of like, well, she's not just a damsel in distress, even though she does fall into the gothic imagery of Batman carrying a unconscious woman is a very like Dracula Universal style image. But yeah, and I think some of the posters have Katie Holmes as passed out Rachel while Christian Bale's looking all somber. But she's more than that. She does work, and not in a way where you go like, oh, like I'm thinking if the grifters that we have now saw Katie Holmes back then, they'd be writing about how, oh, what's this deal with this lady? Why is she trying to like kill his buzz and everything?
She literally took down Scarecrow with one taser shot. Come on.
But yeah, but I think she works well with what she needs to be. The kind of you can argue she's kind of like the voice of Gotham's justice system, crying out for someone to do something, and Batman ends up being that case. And of course, she's the one that gives the most iconic line that Batman has to later we write back to her with. It's not who you are underneath; it's what you do that defines you. So before he dies, supposedly dies, and going to go into a battle that could kill him, he tells her like, "I don't even know who you are. Who are you?" And he just back to him. It's not who I am underneath. That's why that defines. She realizes, oh crap, that's Bruce. So when she goes to see him, she's the one that tells him, I got to see you with your mask. I understand now. And he goes, oh well, Batman's just this and that. And he goes,
The mask. It's like, no, this face you're putting on, this act as Bruce Wayne the billionaire, this is your mask.
like the real you is the face that the criminals now fear. And she's like, maybe someday when Batman's gone, I'll see that friend of mine again. But yeah, but she's the one that says that Bruce Wayne is just the coverage, and Batman is him finally finding himself to do the drive that he needs to do. So she's the one that gives that line. I told him it kind of reminded me a bit of the Spider-Man farewell scene in Raimi's Spider-Man, but I don't know why it gave me the same vibes. But I think it obviously it works much more better than that. Uh,
understand that Nolan probably took some cues from other superhero movies, especially ones that succeeded and all that.
yeah, of course, he didn't want to try to emulate Steel, that's for sure. Okay, so
But yeah, as far as characters go, especially I think Kate Holmes stands out that she's not like a lovelorn love interest and all that. She's like a grounded character who's kind of like helping Bruce to kind of remember like where his point is, because like even when he's kind of like trying to act up playing as Bruce Wayne, when he sees a familiar face, he just kind of like crumbles a little bit and it's like kind of takes the facade down a little bit. And
she even says, "You'll always still
I
be
think
that little boy I know."
yeah, I think it was that moment where he had to realize like I need to make sure I don't uh lose focus on myself, because like I kind of let my let myself go when I saw Katie out in public is like acting as this thing, and I have to make sure I keep this facade going, unless people get wise and get her in the crossfire.
Of course, when she's going, I'm going to go deal with Crane right now, and he has a birthday party to prepare for. He instantly drops everything so he can go and try to save her from when he knows he's going to be walking into the lion's den.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Uh,
all right, but I think we're going to get to my personal favorite cast member and senior guy in this whole veteran and this whole thing that ties the whole thing together for me. I mean, you can tell. I mean, look at the thumbnail.
the old man. Oops, sorry, that was a typo. Yeah, Gary Oldman.
Yeah, Gary Oldman as Officer Jim Gordon and Sergeant Gordon in this case, and oh my God, does I know he's always known as that actor who's a chameleon who can get into his role from playing an eccentric hippie to playing goddamn Dracula himself to like. I mean, the guy is is a class act A grade actor who can just disappear into a role. And in this case, he disappeared so seamlessly into Jim Gordon. He's Jim Gordon ripped right out of the pages. Like he is unequivocally, he's not Gary Oldman playing Jim Gordon. It's just this is Gordon.
And yeah, to the point where I think a lot of comic book artists kind of have made Jim Gordon look more and more like Gary Oldman's portrayal.
It's funny because Gary Oldman is trying to look like Frank Miller's drawing of Jim Gordon from Year One, and it's like 1-to-1 almost.
And so we able to see this Sergeant Gordon, who's kind of like pretty much, he's pretty much like the last straw in Gotham Police Force. Like even his partner is like corrupt, but like he is to the point where like even Flask was saying like, look, if you don't like get freebies or anything, it makes us look nurse. You're gonna be like finding us or something. It's like, and he says like, look, I'm no rat, but
The town's
like,
so bent.
just kind of tired of all this. Like in hell, in this town like this, who's there even a rat to?
Because that's the point. He plays Gordon as he's trying to do the right thing. He's the last honest cop, but he's also feeling surrounded, drowned out, defeated. It's like almost to him going, what's the point? But then Batman comes along, and that kind of helps him reinvigorate his like trying to do the right thing motif. I sent you a panel from Year One, the ending shot of it. You can see what I mean. Like that's this was before Gary Oldman, but that's Gary Oldman in the dang illustration. Look at.
It's funny. The first time you actually see Jim Gordon is actually in one of in the flashback when Bruce lost his parents, and of course the press are all about like, holy shit, like your brains are dead. We need to get like an interview with the sole survivor, the young prince that now is an orphan. And of course Bruce is kind of sitting in the police office with a younger, this lower rank officer, Jim Gordon, who's kind of like consoling him, giving him his coat to keep him warm and give him comfort, and just understanding that he just went through a very, very traumatic episode.
Uh-huh.
And it was probably that little kindness that like Bruce kind of like took notice on, like having like one person give a honest to goodness a good deed, a good honest moment of like kindness and reflection like literally moments after he just lost his parents to such a traumatic, tragic, like nightmare that any kid should never have to deal with. It's probably like the one thing that kind of like deviated Bruce from having to end up being like another like crook formed in the seeds of Gotham is like, well, if the world damns me, then I'll damn the whole world.
Yeah.
So
So
it was just that one little kind of snack that kind of deviates him off of that path just enough to eventually lead to a bigger ripple, essentially creating the Batman.
well, yeah, and that's why when Batman comes back to town, he's the one cop he can like rely on. Like when I love it when the lights go out and he hears a click. He thinks, "Oh crap, they're here to assassinate me." But he tells them like, "You're a good cop, one of the few." And he because he needs to work with law enforcement, but he can't exactly be on a one-to-one term with them because you got a commissioner who you don't know if he's on the take or not. You got a lot of the beat cops taking money of their own and working for the mob. So it's like he's the one beacon of light in a sea of scum that Batman can see as you're going to be my lifeline. You're going to be the legit way I do this. So and even Gordon goes like when he tells him later the commissioner put out a bigger warrant for your arrests. He thinks you're dangerous. And what about you? He's like, I honestly think you're trying to help. Oh, there's also,
Before.
but they also have. This is also. I keep reusing a joke from the later movie Dark Knight, where every time someone turns away and Batman's gone, I go, he does that. And he does that to Gordon a lot to the point where he's used to it. By the time when it happens in Dark Knight, when Harvey's like, "Where'd he go?" and Gordon's telling him, "Yeah, he does that." But like I says, the relationship does work, where you can see a trust forming, a trust building. So like to the point where, Batman trusts him with his car to help save the city.
If Batman trusts you to handle his Batmobile, that's a huge recommendation.
Yeah, and like I said, though, he just makes it work. And oh my god, when he becomes Lieutenant Gordon by the end, it feels like you can see the seeds of Commissioner Gordon coming through. That yeah, I know. Like if they never made more Batman movies after Batman Begins, you can still imagine how the relationship would flourish. And I love that bit where you can see, he's actually getting hopeful again. That's the thing, because when you first see him with Flash, he looks very like, what's the point anymore? But once Batman starts working with him, and he starts like seeing some real stuff go on, but they save the day. You can see Gordon actually start to pep up a little, and then like because
Yeah, it's especially one moment that kind of like showed a big change, and it was like we're at the docks. They arrest a lot of Falcone's men, and the cop said, "Well, these work for Falcone." And he's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We're never gonna tie us to him anyway."
and then he's
So about that,
he's tied directly, literally tied directly to the dock. So it's like we got Falcone at the scene. So yeah,
wait, is that what is that in the sky? Is that a what is that? Is that giant owl or something?
I laughed so hard in our screening when you said that, because ironically, the Justice Lords, the evil AU Justice League people from Elseworlds, their Batman's called Owlman.
It doesn't matter.
But yeah, so
Played by James Wood, like he never fails. Anyways, yeah, we pretty much got a good handle on Sergeant Jim Gordon.
but he looks the part. He voices it well. It's like in the comics, my default voice for him is Oldman's as Gordon. It's so funny that he's an Englishman playing a American cop so well. It's like I keep forgetting that when I watch him in regular interviews. I go, why is he talking like Sirius Black? Oh wait, I forgot. That's his natural accent.
The notion is that like British people have the good ability to put on an American accent. It's just the Americans that have trouble doing a British accent. Although it's there is a rare instance like our Robert Downey Jr. will do an impeccable British voice to the point where director
Guy Ritchie, I think.
Guy Pearce. No, it's Guy Pearce.
Oh.
No, yeah, no. Now what?
Guy Pearce is Aldrich
No.
Killian.
Yeah, no. It was who's the director of the Sherlock Holmes movies?
Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie, or he said like, "Damn, your British accent is more impeccable than mine," and I'm literally born from Britain.
So yeah, and also on that note, Christian Bale also is from Wales. So when I hear him talk normally, like I go like, "Oh crap, Batman's played by a Britishman," and even Red, White, and Blue Americana himself, Superman Henry Cavill, also hails from the land of Red, White, and Blue over there. Huh. Tom Holland, he's in the running to be James Bond because he's also a natural Brit. I keep forgetting, like, I'm so used to his little American accent that when I actually hear him talk, I'm like, why is Tom Holland putting on a... Oh crap, that's actually his voice.
Like, it's gonna be fun to see how the internet people go like. It's like, yet another actor that's like got so much attention that people hate him because he's just doing his work.
Okay, but yeah, but Gary Oldman, great job, and we got another lovely face to round out this allies because Batman's got a lot of great allies, and none more interesting than well,
God himself.
yeah, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, a character from the comics who's made scant appearances in other media, but this is like his first big like break into the mainstream, if you ask me.
Yeah, again, one of his few scant appearances was in the animated series, but it's kind of like rare for him to appear. Like I think I remember, the first time I even see Lucius is in an episode where he's actually getting framed for a crime.
Yeah.
Is Duane's like, Bruce, why are you kind of going on your way to help this guy? And you realize, oh, this is the guy that you go to for repair your Batmobile.
Uh-huh. And yeah, so but he's the guy in Applied Scientist who's to work with the board, and he's the one that knows all the gear, all the tech, and he explains it in such a way that you can buy that. That actually could work. That's it. I think.
I mean, are you gonna say no to his explanation? I mean, dude's able to like make uh the daily life routine of a penguin sound like engaging cinema, for God's sake.
To the point that you're crying by the middle of that movie because of how he tells it. Damn. March of the Penguins also turns 20 this year, I think.
I need to actually see that. I never actually seen
Oh god,
March of the
you
Penguins.
gotta watch it, but it will make you cry, I promise. There's a sad scene that happens that never left me. But
Dear.
yeah, but yeah, point is, yeah, he does it work. He makes it work, and he also had the funny with him too, like when Batman has to come up with these reasons for why he wants to use something like a Nomax survival suit that can stop a bullet, and tells him, well, what do you want to do with it then? Oh, I'm gonna go spelunking,
Looking.
cave diving.
You want a bulletproof, highly expensive biosuit to go cave dwelling. That almost sounds like you're trying to burn down a matchstick set with a flamethrower.
Yeah. On top of that, he is yeah, but he's smart enough not to ask too much. He even says so. If you don't have to tell me what you're up to, so when I mask, I don't have to lie. Okay, fine, but don't
But
think.
don't treat me like an idiot.
Yeah, because when he mentions how he comes back, like, what's it at this time? I'm doing base jumping, like with the parachute, like without a parachute. He's like, yeah. Do you have anything that can glide, lightweight fabrics? And he's like, oh, I know what to do. He always has a solution to everything. That's what's great about him, and he'll explain it, and you go like, yeah, I believe in it. And and plus Morgan Freeman just has that gravitas to make it feel like, you can trust him. Like he said, it's God. From Bruce Almighty.
Yeah, I can't wait to when we get to discuss about all the gadgets and toys and all that. But yeah, it's straightforward to the point. Morgan Freeman, like Lucius, is also keen in helping bring up a antitoxin for the fear gas that Scarecrow devices. That's going to be a big factor in this movie.
And I love it that this guy is so good at his system that even when one of the Wayne guys tells him a specific case number, he knows right away. Oh yeah, it's this and that. It's supposed to vaporize this and that. Like he just knows it like off the bat. He's smart.
And probably a little too smart for his own good.
Yeah.
Or almost got him fired for that.
But I love how even Bruce Wayne tells me he knows his spirit. He's like, well, I was like, got to get back here and do this. My security clearance has been revoked. He's all, well, that wouldn't stop you now, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
But oh man, he's like I said, not much to say other than that he does it well, and he becomes such a big part of the mythos that people. I think they kind of see him as Batman's Q to us a way, even though he's more than that in the comics. But I think this movie really helped people to go, oh, that guy, that's his gadget guy. That's the guy in the chair for him. Actually, in the next movie, he really is the guy in the chair for him.
I wonder how the audience reacted to him. Was it in such a negative way, whereas opposed to when Iron Man is the one that gives Spider-Man all his tech and all of that?
Well,
Because but both Spider-Man and Batman are kind of on the same level of being smart enough to devise their tactics, but apparently people took it badly when Spider-Man couldn't
I think,
make all this stuff on his own. When really we really seen him make his own web shooters,
but
his own suit, devise a way for his senses to be able to handle well with his own goggles and all that.
well, the thing is that Batman has always been tech based, so him having a little bit of help kind of helps because they said Batman was a smart detective, but they didn't say he was a genius inventor, not like Iron Man. But it helps. But yeah, so then we have one more ally, so to speak of with a freaking Jedi Master himself, Liam Neeson as Ducard. Well, actually,
He's not really a supporting character. He's actually the main villain.
yes, he's actually not Ducard, but okay, you're gonna get on me for this, but I'll say it anyway. He is Ra's al Ghul, called Ra's al Ghul in this movie.
And here I thought it was pronounced, how did that lady put it? Is it Mr. Raz Al Ghul?
Yeah, the Hand of the Demon. But yeah, I believe because I always heard the publishers when they refer to the stories, they refer to him as Raish, and even Talia in the Batman Beyond episode where he appears talked about Raz, and Terry says, "You mean Raz Al Ghul?" And she goes, "Actually, it's Raish, but that's a common mistake most people make." She said with a laugh. So, but I'll for the brevity's sake, I will refer to him as Raz for the rest of this review.
So, Nathan, last time I saw him, he was, he kind of gave me a little bit of a traumatic moment, seeing his death at the hands of Darth Maul.
And I think, did he do Narnia before or after this? Let me see real quick. Chronicles of Narnia was the movie, not the book. Yeah, same year. Holy crap! But he did it that Christmas, so we saw him as he wasn't Aslan yet, so he didn't get traumatized by him being sacrificed to the White Witch either. So
He got better.
yes, he did. But yeah, yeah, it's funny. He comes along as this kind, almost wisdom figure, like a Kenobi almost, if that makes sense, to going with the Jedi parallels to Bruce in prison. And once he gets to the mountain, he decides to not even give him the training goals right away. It's like, okay, you're jumping right into the fire with me, and just starts like almost kicking his ass on day one.
Him.
He even said I could barely stand after walking the mountain, and like the thing is, you can sense that he has an intensity to him, but he's also he's obviously trying to mentor Bruce. So like when they're over there on the actual melting ice lake glacier that Nolan and them were lucky to find because it wasn't there before when they were scouting the location, and they thought, well, this would be a great backdrop, but it was starting to change with the season, so they had to make sure they got every shot they could on those days they were filming the fight on the lake, because some of that creakling you hear is not added effect. I think that's actually the sound of the actual ice breaking underneath. When you hear it echo in the distance when they're like on top of the lake, and you hear I think that's actual the shelf itself starting to shift. But yeah, they fought on top of an actual glacier, and I love it whenever he gets into angry voice, because when Bruce tries to defend his father's inaction by saying, "Hey, I at least had training. The training is nothing." but the will is everything.
The will to act.
And I do love how there's a running joke where Batman will always fall to something and he goes, always mind your surroundings. So when there's a final turnaround when he's too busy focusing on Batman to not realize that the train is blown up. I think Batman finally waited years to tell him, listen, you never managed to learn to manage your surroundings. So,
But yeah, the big twist of him revealing that he was in fact actually Ra's al Ghul instead of Ducard, I think that was Nolan's way of trying to deflect the whole Lazarus Pit. Because yes, you did want to give like a mythos and all that, but back then especially, Nolan was kind of a little bit hesitant to kind of portray something as magical as like a pit that's notorious for giving people a second breath of life, essentially, or
mm-hmm.
giving them a resurrection.
Because we did see a Ra's al Ghul earlier with Ken Watanabe playing Decoy Raz, he has the mystical Asian look, the almost wise smile. You think, okay, you buy, maybe this guy could be Raz, and then a flaming building falls on top of him, and you go, okay, well that's it. So when Bruce is at the party and Bob Kane's wife is telling him how you got to meet Mr. Ra's al Ghul, and he realizes, wait, that guy's dead. Then he sees another guy and goes, no, you're not Raz. I watched him die.
It was especially learning considering that earlier, when he had Scarecrow dead to rights, he was asking, "Who are you working for?" And he literally gives the answer. It's like Ra's al Ghul. It's like, you're bullshitting. Ra's al Ghul is dead. Who are you working for?
So yeah, what's funny is that they make Raz to be an intimidating figure because even Falcone, who we'll get to later, is mentioned as like the big bad boss of Gotham. So he mentions how we you gotta stop doing this stuff for my guys and everything. He says, well, he would not want to hear it. When he gets here and he goes, oh my god, like he's coming here. It's like the Emperor is coming here in Star Wars. So the fact that the big man himself is running the operations coming, it even makes Falcone have a little pause. You go, this guy is who everyone is afraid of in Gotham. So if he's afraid of someone else, how bad can that be? And he, even to the point when he mentions, you don't want me tucking my mouth about anything like that. He's like, I want to know what like saying that whatever he's got planned is big. And even Scarecrow's all like, oh, I know what he would tell me. We'd have to kill you. And he's even Falcone's like, nah. He can't even get me, not in my own town. But no, even when Gordon asked Batman, was Crane working for Falcone? And he goes, no. He was working for someone way worse. So when Ducard shows up in the party to reveal he's really Raz, he talks about how the League of Shadows has always put decadent societies down at the height of their power. Rome was burned to the ground. London was burned to the ground. Rome was ransacked. Plague rats.
We did ships with plague rats.
Point is, he says every time society needs, they see themselves as like the cleansing fire in a forest that burns all the rot and the weeds away and leaves enough soil for new life to pop out the proper way. That's how he sees the function of the League of Shadows, as said by Ken Watanabe as fake Ra's al Ghul.
But he has always cemented the fact that he saw Bruce Wayne as like his greatest student. Like, I mean, for the big initiation, he was kind of surprised at how he took an initiative to trick him up with a little cleaving trick, something that would have exposed Bruce for like a simple mistake, but he turned that mistake into a bait, as a trap for him.
Yeah, I love that bit, and he's proud of him. That's why when he's telling him, when Ken Watanabe as Ra's is telling him to, Raz is telling him to kill the petty criminal, he's pleading with him, but it's not like he's pleading like, Raz will excommunicate you if you don't do it. It's like, please, I'm asking you, Bruce, please, we've all given our lives to this idea. You only have to prove that you're willing to go along with it. Like, I love the desperation in his voice as he's telling him, and he seems very surprised when he manages to find an out from a seemingly impossible, like, either you do it or you don't moment. And he
And it's funny thing is like one of the themes that a lot of like movie buffs like to point out is that the crux of the movie is about Batman trying to find a father figure to grow onto because well he lost one when he was turning when, turned 8. So there's like father figures like Ducard who kind of like gives like takes him out of his like slump of like he was kind of essentially like cornered. He was like going through the rigmarole of trying to understand criminals, and he was basically to the point where like he's literally like picking fights, and even the guards have to like put him into solitary, not for his safety, but for like the safety of all the prisoners,
as
because he's just picking fights.
as Rorschach would say, "I'm not locked up in here with you. You're all locked up in here with me."
And Ducard and slash Ra's al Ghul was kind of like a in a sense like a very stern, very uh aggressive father figure, but it was mostly just to sharpen him out of his dullard mind. Essentially, like even when he's like recovering from his loss of being frozen in ice, he's telling him like, no, give warmth to your chest. Your arms will heal themselves.
Well, according to Liam, he was a guy in the Scouts, kind of. So he knew the actual what Bruce was doing was actually the proper thing to do, and then what Roz was telling him was the improper thing to do. But he went, but that was in the script. He said, but I knew like actually, I think I might have just I wonder how many people have gotten the wrong information from that line. But yeah, you're right.
He's playing a bad guy, but essentially he like even when he like pleads with Bruce to like turn around after his stint at the Arkham Asylum, where it forces his hand to like just start this thing here and now. He really just needs him to kind of be his spearhead. So like I know you're like trying to bring justice and order. You really did bring the crime boss to his knees. He's now locked up. You did that on your own in one night. And all I'm asking you is now take that same anger and put it across the city. Like show the world that the cities like Gotham will not stand for their injustice and all that.
Uh huh. But he's so
And
committed.
Bruce is like, well, I'll be standing where I am between you and the people of Gotham, not beside you.
And he seems pretty disappointed at that. And like I said, this one moment, I just love it. I don't know why. It just always happens. It's during the big climax. Everything's blowing up. Everything's happening. And he's on the train ready to fulfill his evil plan. All of a sudden, Batman shatters right through the window, and he's still ready to fight him. And almost saddened and also more saddened than upset, he just tells Batman, he'll never learn. Like, you're not getting it. Before going into the attack. Just something about the way Liam delivers that just, I don't know, it sells the character for me. Because
That's what I was saying. Well, see, she took my advice about the cutting, but literally.
when you saw the outfit, like, oh damn, like you didn't have to make a whole costume out of it.
It says the guy who has the face mask and ninja gear on.
But yeah, and you understand what Ray, damn it, what Ross is doing. Sorry, if we had a counter for every time I slipped up and said race, we'd probably get a little tizzy right now. So when Roz you can understand that he's extreme. He has a burn it all down mentality, but you can tell I think Denny O'Neil described Roz as this. He said, "Batman is a struggle to like stay in the same place and keep us stable from falling over the abyss, whereas Roz has a bigger worldview of saying if we don't do nothing about this, we may not be around." Much longer. So he sees it in the macro. He sees it in the big picture. So he says, "What's a few billion lives in a city? No, what's a few million lives in a city versus the lives of billions?" Basically, I think that's the mentality Roz has when he's okay with sacrificing Gotham to destroying itself with fear and everything. But he also talks about
We all know the quote. It's always strictly. It's like the. Well, actually, no. That quote would probably actually fit his idea, but no. Okay, so it's basically. I know it'd be like hypocritical for me to point this from this movie, but take it from the Josh Whedon Justice League movie where Batman gives the advice to Flash about just save one person. That's it. All I want you to do is just save one person.
Now, what do I do next? It's like, you don't know what to do. Just save one. Start with saving one. Because even Bruce is like, I gotta save a few lives. Even Roz is saying, you can hardly call what these people have lives. You're just giving them borrowed time. Mentioning how they tried to kill Gotham before with economics, and how they're the reason the Great Depression happened. And basically, in a way, Descartes is the reason. Roz is the reason that I'm getting all the identities fixed up. But Roz is particularly the reason his parents died. So he says, we're not gonna have no idealistic people like your parents getting in the way this time. Mm-hmm.
To finish the job.
Mm-hmm. So, but he does have an accomplice. We need a much more physical force than Roz for our surprise villain, and we got the other fantastical fellow from the comics here, that fellow we mentioned earlier, who was almost Batman, but just like Tom Hiddleston before him, lost it to another guy. But they tell him, "Here's a consolation prize. Why don't you be the villain for us?" So we got Cillian Murphy as Dr. Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow.
Like if you're a counter for getting Roz's name jumbled up, I think I would get a counter for years I always say I'm usually good at phonetics and reading words out and saying, okay, I think logically it would be pronounced this way, but I don't know why it's this name. I always pronounce it as Cillian Murphy.
I think he said it himself in interviews. It's Killian, so that's why I went with it. Cause I saw enough Oppenheimer interviews where it stuck with me because it was all over the touring for Oppenheimer.
Yeah, so it's funny that we have Scarecrow in this because as he said originally for Batman Triumphant, the original fifth Batman movie to be, the main folk villain that they were going to have would have been Scarecrow, and by golly, that's the first time I've ever heard that initially they were going to have Jack Dixon come back as this nightmare figure of the Joker coming back from the dead to haunt Batman. I honest to God would pay so much money to see that timeline happen.
And yeah, so like I said, the thing about him is he's so obsessed with the power of the mind and everything like that. And he's basically been playing as someone who's been getting all these enforcers of Falcone sent to Arkham Asylum on the insanity plea instead of doing hard jail time. Even people as crazy as Victor Zsasz, who is known for every time he kills someone, he etches a mark into his body. And when you see him in the Arkham games, he is head to toe covered in scars. So you're like, oh damn, this guy has quite the body count.
Enough to get his face though. Apparently, no. This is a moneymaker here. I gotta have my side projects fill in sometime.
Yeah. So so the fact that to a guy like us who never read the comics, you're like, oh well, this is a crazy bad guy. But if you're someone who knows your history, the fact that Crane is able to get someone like Victor Zsasz off of death row from the insanity plea should tell you how crazy that is. You're letting this guy walk.
Yeah, and I know there are some people who are kind of disappointed don't get to see Scarecrow really up in the ante like we do see in like we ever saw in the animated series, because those sequences in there, oh boy.
Well, yeah, they're a real trip.
Oh my god, the season 3 design of the guys. Someone must have been cooked up on a bad nightmare and stuff to realize, I know exactly how to redesign this guy.
Yeah, Scarecrow is one of Batman's iconic villains, but he always is fluid, shifting, changing with the times. In the early animated shows in Legion of Doom and stuff like that, he's a literal, guy looking like Wizard of Oz Dorothy Scarecrow. In the animated series, it's a little more of a demented take on that. It's funny, when he takes off the mask, he looks like an Animaniacs character, but when he puts on the mask, he's very sinister. And then you get that season 3 redesign where you're like, holy crap, this is
I'll sign off on this.
That's a Goosebumps cover right there.
No, it's like if Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark had a unholy hellspawn baby.
Yeah, so we don't really get to see him go actually dress up in straw and wield a pitchfork, but the mask is there, the burlap sack, and I love how Killian introduces it because it's an effective moment where, you know, I think they joke that he had such beautiful eyes. They would find an excuse for him to like take off his glasses at any point because there was a couple of times in the movies where when he wants to be serious about business, he'll just take his glasses off,
I
and
got the glasses.
that's how you know, like, oh crap, he's getting into business mode. And then so when he does the glasses thing, and he tells tough bad guy Falcone, would you like to see my?
See my mask.
And you're going like,
Use it for my experiments.
so when he explains it, you feel like, oh god, if you were in a room with him and you hear that, you'd be like, okay, let me out, because he doesn't even have to lace you with fear toxin, because just the way he delivers, would you like to see my mask, is like, you know you're not going to walk away from that conversation.
So, to common, ordinary person, this doesn't seem to be an effective scary tool to a guy like you. But these crazies, they seem can't stand it.
And he uses his fear toxin to, like, what's funny is they either make you laugh or they frighten you, is how they do the trippy scenes where they make like everything gets hyper focused. It's like when you're high. Well, I've never been high, but I'm assuming this is what it feels like when you're like on a trip, and
Bad acid trip.
and everything is like hyper, where like you can see your own blur lines. That's what it kind of looks like. And with the Scarecrow, it makes him look 10 times more larger than life.
And it's funny is that we kind of like we get a little bit of hint of like what his fear toxin is made out of, because early in the movie, Bruce, for his initiation, is given the blue flower that he had to pick up before he arrived at the headquarters of the League of Shadows is actually a very potent when it's mixed in and given. If you inhale it, you're gonna have like a very, it's not to an intense fashion, but it's kind of more like having being awake during a dream, essentially.
Yeah.
Where instead of being able to control a dream, the dream is starting to like get you paranoid, get you to double think, hesitate,
Well, and
make you even think like see an empty box and it's gonna make your head feeling like gas. Like what's in it? It's like probably something harmless, or could be like something that is literally from my worst nightmares.
like so. You mean if someone opens that case, you're gonna see a bunch of job applications fly out? But yeah, no, yeah. Like I said, when Bruce opens up the box and sees a bunch of bats, I think we have a feeling that bats aren't really there, but because that's such a strong trauma for him, that's what he sees. So Cranes does when he zaps Batman with his potent mix, Batman sees like bats crawling out of Scarecrow's mask and everything.
This is kind of creepy to see, like like any like creepy thing like it seen like other movies, like you see like if someone has like a spider or bugs or moths coming out of it, it's gotta be like the most like skin crawling feeling you're gonna have to see happen before
I
you.
think that's why the Mummy's so effective, because those scarabs, when they're like in the skin, you see the little lump, you're like, ooh. But yeah,
But unfortunately, like the Scarecrow doesn't get really much conflict with Batman aside from that one instance where he got the jump on him, and we literally see him like trying to do that trick again, but Batman learned and literally gives him that same dose. And oh boy, I think a lot of kids probably remember that one where they saw like a literal Batman like just
with like goo coming out of his mouth and everything.
screeching at him.
And I like how he has this holy shit look on his face as he's looking at him, to the point where he disassociated and said, it became a voice message saying, Dr. Crane isn't in right now, but if you'd like to leave a message. I like that detail where after he's used to him, Batman just like knocks him out against the wall, if you notice. I missed that detail, so when I saw it this time again, like, boom, I'm like, damn, he put him out.
Yeah, he doesn't even get like a big final fight against the Dark Knight when like the Narrows are going through like the toxin, like essentially Descartes, gentlemen, it's time for the city to learn a message,
And the message
and the
is
message is
panic. And oh my gosh, what was it? Yeah, Scarecrow does get a metal image of him running on a horse, and the fear-induced people's eyes, the horse is blowing fire.
he's essentially the fifth horseman, the fear.
But of course, he gets taken out by a single shot in the face.
Of the taser, and then he's off into the mist, never to be seen again until either Gotham Knight or the Dark Knight, whichever one you pick to follow through.
Although in Gotham Knight, he has his own cult, and on top of that, he is like straight up the Scarecrow from the comics with like the withered hat and the straw and everything. But then he went back to being a business suit man with the simple burlap sack, which I love his bit in Dark Knight's opening. With I told you my compound would take you places, but I never said it'd be places you actually wanted to go.
And then he immediately gets taken out, and you're like, okay, well, I guess that's all you get. It's like just a handwave return. No, apparently he comes back in the third one. So literally, we have. I think this might be actually the first we ever seen in like a movie franchise. Well, like not counting Lex Luthor from the Richard Donner super movies or all the Superman movies essentially, but I think probably for the Batman movies to have a recurring villain kind of pop up over and over.
Mm-hmm. And then, all right. So, but yeah, he's in it, and I wish more could have been done. But Killian makes what he has works. He has that menace when he's in the mask. He has that. He could snap at any minute now, feeling when he's out of the mask. Like the part that's kind of ominous is when he decides to say, "Okay, well, time to show her my hand." And he takes her to the Narrows where he sees all the toxin being dumped in, and he says, "This is where our medicine is made. Maybe you should take some to clear your head." Also, he's one of the few guys to drop the name the Batman in such a dramatic fashion. As I love with the oh wait, he's here. So who? The Batman. That's the way he describes it.
But yeah, those are kind of main key component casts. I mean, we do have others like Falcone and Thomas Wayne, but they kind of are pretty direct. There's not really much nuance to them.
Man, we got Rutger Hauer as Mr. Earl, the head of Wayne Enterprise, who is like trying to sell the company and everything like that. And he's surprised when Bruce shows up, but he's still, he's not really an antagonist. He's just, an obstacle. But he does get his comeuppance in the end, where he tries to fire Lucius, and Lucius ends up taking his job. Did you get the memo? Thomas Wayne works for his advice that he needs.
Yeah, although his portrayal does get kind of parodied in some situations.
Really?
Well, apparently he's the first one to get shot, but he has the last say.
Oh yeah, Bruce,
so
don't be afraid.
Yeah, apparently he was able to keep himself alive enough to at least say those last words. But the mother's like, nope, an instant kill shot, dead.
Oh wait, well, oh yeah, but hey, Snyderverse Bruce Wayne at least got to say Martha. Why'd you say that? Yeah. Okay, but yeah, but Tom Wilkinson plays Falcone well, but he's memorable. But it's funny how I think comic and Batman, the Batman wise, it should be pronounced Falcone, but I'm so used to them calling him Falcone that I call him Falcone all the time. And he does have my favorite line when Scarecrow's showing off his mask to him, and he tells him, "When did the nut take over the nut house?" But he has.
It's nice. You just going Scarecrow.
He does have a few nice lines too. Like when they say they want to move rabbits and bears. Bears are the drugs, and the rabbits are the cranes. And he goes, "Why? Ignorance is bliss, my friends. Do not burden yourself with these secrets of scary people." And I think he does his monologue well when he's telling Batman his whole, you thought you tasted just because your mom and dad got shot, the ugly side of life, but you never tasted desperate. His whole speech is great.
You had to go 1,000 miles to meet someone who doesn't know your name. So don't come down here with your anger.
This is a world you don't understand. And you always fear what you don't understand. So great line. Yes, he's kind of here and there. So, um, but yeah. Okay. Alrighty
The
then.
I guess we need to talk about the all the things that make up it being a Batman. Like, of course, the bat suit. There's always got to be how's the bat suit gonna look? Well, for one thing, there's no nipples, thank God. But as with most Batman suits, there's always got to be uh the fact that there's no neck movement to help. The Batman's always got to have this like big flourish to move about, having to handle without moving his head, which they eventually did turn around to uh, redesign the suit so that Christian Bale could actually move his head. Because I think at one point he said, like, if I had to wear that suit again, I'm gonna flip my head off.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at least this Batman could turn his head, but it did have that panther neck and everything.
But needless to say, I think I actually kind of like the way that they made the bat suit kind of have the flourishes of being dramatic and all that, but it actually does look a little bit more practical, if that's the word. Like, yeah, they kind of made the suits tactical. The other ones, like, make it be a rubberized bulletproof suit, but you do kind of have to look at it and go like, okay, so when did the practical just go out the window to kind of like make everything look the way it does here?
Looked like it got very toyetic.
Yeah, makes sense. And oh my goodness, and it gets worse with the later movies where the point is like Val Kilmer's original Batman suit is kind of like it was a nice. It still has some flourishes or reminiscent of Michael Keaton, but then when his cape gets blown up, he's like, well, it's time to like go for an ostentatious upgrade, and it's like, wow, it looks like a freaking action figure commercial. But with here, there's like a lot of more you can actually see as Lucius Fox shows like all the small hits and kinks and describes that like it'll stop piercing blades. It'll be able to deflect bullets aside from like a direct dead shot. But noted that like a suit like this, it was never gonna. The company decided soldiers like multiple soldiers' lives are not gonna be worth like $300,000 for each suit. But when it's in action, you could definitely see like if there was like an army of these guys here, they would pretty much like decimate a lot of places.
Yeah, and like I said, it looks like it does damage. It has some of the flourishes, like the ninja blade and stuff.
And you can also see that Bruce adds in some other flourishes in like he takes the gauntlets that he got from training with the League Assassins or League of Shadows. Well, to be fair, they got the same diegetic ideology essentially. But he takes that. He also kind of like he formats his cape to be able to be take it in the shape of a bat. So there's actually a reason for how he's able to glide and make it look like bat wings, because he could make it like a wingsuit like we see in Robert Pattinson's the Batman, where in that depiction that was like pretty much the first time he tried doing something like that, and it was kind of a little bit of a risky move on his part. But here you can actually see him like setting it up and making the skeletal ridge structure for it. And I think that's another reason why people like this movie. Is that it's essentially you can see the building blocks of how this one guy with like can envision making building this thing with the different thematic elements, different practical elements to kind of effectively make itself more than like a simple human, someone that can just be able to like keep moving even after like gets hit with shots, or able to stand and look like he's unfazed by a taser bolt hit him.
Well, it's kind of funny that Keaton kind of just stood there and got shot in his bat suit.
Not unaccounting for his first time where we see him where he kind of takes a shot and falls down, but then kind of stands up, rises to kind of give the criminals a big freak out moment.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the bat suit has a little, but it is a little heavy. They even make fun of it in the next movie when he's all like, "I'm too heavy, too slow in my suit." Like, he's able to like smash a car with it.
Yeah, but apparently he wants to be able to move next. Like, well, okay, you're gonna get it, but you're gonna be exposed to the elements. You are gonna be able to get pierced by knives with this. But I feel like at that point he's like he's been able to handling the criminal element enough that he can handle like not getting jumped by that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, if it's somebody he banged, yeah, she'll stab him next. All right. So we got the toys. We have the first mainstay, the batarang, which they're pretty cool. Like, if I had to own any bat throwing star from any of the series, it would be this one. I just really like it.
Yeah, notice you said throwing stars. They're not like the boomerangs like we see how they do in most media, like the Adam West, the cartoons, the video games,
Keaton had one.
the Keaton movies. Which they always keep rolling out the replicas for that. I still really want to get like at least one batarang replica, but here I think Nolan decided like, well, I think it's a little bit more practical if like they're just like simple things. Like if he loses track of them, it's not really going to be like a worry to pick them up after.
And then we got the grapple gun, which mainstay for him to get around, but he does it in a way where it makes sense. Like, he has it attached to his belt in a way that he can lift up and everything.
Funny story. When they were building up, I think for the hype for the Dark Knight, there was like two different documentaries. There's one that was like a documentary building up to like here and now with the Batman mythos, and the other was kind of like the science of Batman. And they actually have real life repelling belt loops essentially that works essentially like Batman. Although there's needed like a super grappler, which you kind of see in like stuff like the Tomb Raider games, the 2013 ones or such, where it just needs like it's essentially a super loom where it just kind of straight shots you with a grapple. But in the Batman Begins, it's a mini tri. It's more condensed. It's supposed to be like a super thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little high end, but you believe that it would work.
Oh yeah, but if to get it to work for that miniature size, they really need to find a way to get the spool to spin so fast without it overheating.
Or cutting through him and everything, right?
Exactly.
And then the sonar heel, which is not often used, but it does lead to one of the most visually striking moments when, like, he uses the radar to call in tons and tons of bats just coming in a cloud, breaking through the glass and everything. Back up.
It's just funny. You don't often see it, but like it's funny that Batman is able to find a way to weaponize like actual gaggle of bats on his victims, kind of add more ethereal to like his identity. It's like what's the guy instead of like how is a guy in a bat suit able to command an army of bats for him? Apparently,
like he's Dracula or something. Also,
it's funny considering the fact that the police kind of were like saying they say it was just one guy or a creature, and Commissioner was like, it's just some nut in the fucking costume.
And then
of course the next night the police actually see a whole swarm of bats, and I'll bet you anything they're like, oh yeah, how do you explain this, love? How do you explain all this bullshit?
And then plus, I just love that image of him like dropping the sonar, making the bats come, and he does the poster image where he's like coming down with wings down, and he's like walking through, and all those criminals are just staring at Batman like, who's this guy?
And also, yes, all the bats that you see are CG, and like
There's a few real
I
bats.
know this like yeah. I think in the hallway in the mansion where Batman's getting the idea of like what to uh take on the identity of, but when it's like swarms of them, that's all CG. Because if those were like all real bats, let's just say the cleanup crew would have quite a hell of a day to deal with.
Although I do love your reference to like on top to 412 when he sees the I got it possum man. But
But oh yeah, there's actually one more notable toy that he's got in arsenal.
oh, what's that?
What's that? Oh, a tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that.
Oh my god! I think Nolan told Wally Pfister, his production designer, I want something that's a cross between a Hummer and a Lamborghini. So he made like a clay model that was roughly in that direction, and then he just started kit bashing to make the prototype for what would be the tumbler. And it was such a detailed model that they pretty much just upscaled it, like, and made a full blown practical vehicle based off his little scale model.
And, and it works. It's like to this day, there's never been a Batmobile that hasn't been like practically built. There's the Keaton Batmobile, the Schumacher ones, even the Tumbler, uh, yes, even the BVS one. It actually works, and it's well not street legal, but you really need to have like a dedicated license. And I believe the Batman one, it's of course it's gonna be. It's basically like a souped up like uh Dodge Charger essentially.
But I remember when Dark Knight Rises was coming out, they had a documentary featurette about all the all the Batmobiles that they go on tour for charity and stuff. So you'll see like the Keaton mobile and the Schumacher mobile and the Tumbler all driving together and stuff like that. Really
And
wild.
though I actually, and though I kind of favor the BVS Batmobile mostly, I admit I have a big soft spot for the Tumbler, especially since I still to this day own the very toy playset Tumbler vehicle 20 years since they came out. I think I still have it tucked away in the bottom shelf over there.
But
Point to Jonesy there. It's like sitting right next to the Lego set that was uh more recently put out, like I think last year,
I
I
got I
believe.
got the one from a few years prior that has a Scarecrow as part of the set. I know they made another Tumbler that came out with a Joker.
I think I got the one that has Scarecrow in it.
That's a good Tumbler set. It was fun building.
Hmm.
But it,
But yeah, to the fact that I still own the very same toy that they came out in 2005, there's a lot to how they designed this thing and how much of a like impact it is. Literally, the all the police can be able to describe it is like it's basically like a black tank just running across
and I don't
rooftops.
know if it was for Dark Knight or this one, but I told us a famous story of some drunkard in Michigan or whatever that was driving while they were filming, and he saw this thing coming down the road. He thought it was an alien spaceship, and he had to like ram into it because it looked so otherworldly.
And funny enough, the Tumbler, like despite some repairs needed, it still pretty much like walked away fine.
I think.
Huh. So it sounds basically like my car after like one incident happened.
Yeah, it just yeah, and all those jumps, everything you see it does is in camera. There's only like a few miniatures that were needed for like some like over the roof shots. That was a miniature, but for the most part, you're seeing that sucker leap over a ramp, screech. Everything you see it do on camera is the real deal.
Yeah. This game it doesn't like stay very long in the later movies,
Oh
and
yeah,
essentially is turn for the bad guys in the third one.
it's such an iconic, and it has a powerful engine. You hear that little, you go like, oh damn, that thing has a roar to it, and even Gordon jokes when he sees it, man, I gotta get me one of those.
I think it's the next best thing. You'll get to drive it for the climax.
Hmm. And all of this will not be worth a hill of beans if it wasn't for a rousing score behind it. And you got making his first ever superhero score, the maestro Hans Zimmer, doing hero music. In fact, he would be doing hero music for the rest of the decade for a while, to the point where he had to stop. He said.
For better or worse.
Hmm. But
Yeah, for better or for worse. But in here, he definitely decided to kind of go away from the Danny Elfman theme, where it's kind of like this bombastic thing. Like, this is supposed to be like Bruce Wayne starting off as Batman is kind of jump starting like this hellish figure that's come onto Gotham is like really giving a scare, shaking the norm for everyone, cops, criminals, the innocents. Like, if they see him arrive either in person or in the town, where that movie is going to be like showcasing how much effect he's given.
and he decided to avoid going for a, as he called it, a hummable theme, because the other Batmans had themes that you were like, we got na 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 na, ba da ba bum bum, ba da ba bum bum, you know, all that stuff. Even Elliot Goldenthal's had like a bombastic operatic theme, bum 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 bum, ba da ba bum, like a march. But he didn't want a march. He didn't want a thing. He wanted to go something ethereal and ambient. So you got that two-note rise that plays every time Batman is like building up, and he has like these whooshes and organic sounding like flutters, like a bat sound. Like you, I mean, the most iconic track for some people that I've seen it used in so many trailers is Molossus, or I think that's the one. It's, or no, Vespertilia. It's funny. He named all the tracks in his album after scientific bat names. So Vespertilia is that one that has that little whoosh, repeating whoosh with the little loose percussion that you like with that ticking like a clock, almost building to your arrival with Batman.
See how it sounds when we get to the end, but we're almost done. But
And
I guess it's no. It's a sorry. I'm really rambling on. Hey, it's the name of the show, but it's honestly no surprise of what the receptions to this thing came to. That everyone pretty much loved it. It was essentially like a breath of fresh air, like finally away from like all the corniness and getting like this dark and gritty take on the iconic Batman, and the mainstream audience is kind of taken on to accepting that as being like how they view Batman. Essentially, it was essentially what the cinematic version of how the Dark Knight Returns was for the comic book industry.
it's true. It's a good.
You know, technically the comic book for Batman, Batman was being handled like pretty well. It's like had its own dark moments, but it was when Frank Miller put to page, kind of stoked up the mainstream eyes to direct that.
Yeah, you might argue that for better.
There's
You might argue for better or for worse. It also changed not just how Batman was looked, but also how to handle. I think that was the first wave of the gritty, realistic reboot mentality they had for movies in the mid 2000s. I mean, Casino Royale ended up taking that same exact approach to James Bond not long after Batman came out, after they had a last fantastical voyage with Die Another Day, which was considered a fall in the face.
but it also definitely shook up how directors were going to handle the superhero movies. To paraphrase Gordon, it's what about escalation? Escalation. We bring out a gritty Batman movie. They start a cinematic universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like
Because literally, like, it's literally not long after this, a few years later, just as the sequel to it, Dark Knight, would arrive, that Marvel would throw in their hat for to start up having a billionaire have his own story arc, and which lead to being Iron Man, and of course the bigger aftershock of the MCU.
oh, yeah, the escalation did end up happening, and I think it is kind of sad that Batman Begins is kind of seen as the, oh, this was the stepping stone to something greater, and not recognized for the monument that it was as well. Because let's face it, when we talk about Nolan verse, the thing that will always come up first will always be The Dark Knight because of Heath Ledger's powerful performance as the Joker and everything else that went on into it. But we wouldn't be talking about that if we didn't have this one.
Yeah, this thing walks so the Dark Knight can run, but it's still have your any mother would tell you that baby's first walking steps are always going to be a big, momentous, memorable moment that they'll always hold for years to come.
Mm-hmm. And it might be it is the of the three Nolan verse movies. It's probably the most comic-y of the three. Not in a bad way. I'm saying to say that it definitely feels like it's honoring the page. It's honoring the mythology. It's trying to still be rooted in that fantastical world, but bringing it to our own. Because Gotham is still otherworldly in that movie. I mean, it's like a gothic nightmare in the Burton verse and a hedonistic landscape in the Schumacher verse. But here, it's Gotham from the pages, ripped from any issue, brought to life.
Yeah, we have like we're able to see like shimmering skylines and all that. We're able to see like a booming city system, but we also see like it has multiple road layers, and we see not only that glossy highs, but there's also like this sea underbelly, the Narrows. There's like literally a portion that's called the Narrows, where it's literally just a bunch of. It's basically like imagine if the Bronx got escalated to the negative zone. Essentially, like every single building is dilapidated. They look like they would be uh, warranted for uh, need to be excavated and marked as a health hazard, but they still have like lines of laundry still stoked up as if people are still living in them despite the guy's trying to evict us for the third time again. I wonder like how long that's gonna last.
But yeah, I mean,
And it's always raining, of course. I feel like we kind of missed that in the later movies. We don't have like rainy atmospheric storms brushing in. Kind of lose that because in the later movies they just make Gotham look straight up look like Chicago, or in the third movie it looks like Pittsburgh, which is sorry, it's a little bit biased. It's kind of literally a stone's throw backyard, uh, in in a metaphorical sense for me.
but yeah, of the three, you said it might be one of the best of the Nolan films. I think not just like Batman wise, but in his films in general. Even though he's like barely getting a start.
Like 20 years later, I still think I have come around to say that Batman Begins is the better of the three because I feel like it did what it needed to do. It needed to give Batman a clean slate. It needed to give everyone a good jumping on point to understand not only what Batman is about, but what Bruce Wayne's mission ultimately is. Because the way they handle it in the other Batman movies, it's mostly like, why do you do this? Because no one else can. And it's like, well, it's yeah, they just handle this. It's a superhero trope. It's like, well, the we have the bad guys. It needs to be a figure for good to kind of fight them. Just like two and two together. That's kind of the thing. But here, we're trying to understand that this is like a mission that is like built on a young child who gone through a traumatic event and decided his ultimate solution that he came to was to essentially build himself up from nothing and make himself into legend to kind of shake the norm, shake the foundations that have like literally rotted his own hometown into the point where even the League of Shadows is coming in to say, "Yep, burn everything down," and he's saying, "No, this city is salvageable. It only takes one person to start something, and I am that one person.
And yeah, like I said, I think he ends up getting overshadowed by the villains in his. This is the fate of every Batman universe. But here, he
Whereas
really is
here,
the
I
star
feel
of the
like
show.
yeah, here he's able to be like the exact opposite to Ra's al Ghul.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
yeah. So, I like it because it feels, I feel like it gets talked about less because of its bigger brother, The Dark Knight.
I feel like you like it a lot more considering that out of the blue you just said call me up and say, hey Derica, I just I know we just watched this here, and I know we're just kind of like resting after our Jurassic tours here, but you want to kind of do an impromptu talk about Batman Begins, and I just like smirked, seeing a message, and I went, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
because I expected this was gonna happen.
I mean, 20 years is it's not just a milestone for DC, but a milestone for comic book hero movies in general. I mean, it set the stage for what we would eventually to go down the road to, keeping it real and all that stuff. And
But also learning that there's like I feel like with how Batman Begins handles superhero movies is that yes, you have the to bring it real, make it feel relatable to people. You have to make it seem like this could be happening in your city, but also you have to understand you have to give it that mythological feel to it. It's like after all superhero stories at their essence are essentially the next generation of the Greek mythologies, like Odysseus and Perseus and Theseus, or
a lot of
even
this
like
is.
the gods Zeus and like uh, David and Goliath and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even as Linkara has always put it, is they're like the modern day knight errants, the King Arthur mythos and all that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to describe it.
So if so, as long as you have that nice balance between like the real, the downtrodden, but also the uh, legendary, the ethereal, and the hopeful, you're gonna have something that's gonna stand the test of time.
I think Batman Begins definitely stands it. Um, like I said, though, there were some rough parts. Like the battle editing is a little funny looking sometimes because Nolan got better at this with the sequels. I think.
And of course, this was like the early 2000s. Like they were still trying to handle uh, fights in superhero movies
Yeah, Jason Bourne
without
and all that
having
stuff.
to go full without having to go full CGI. Which Nolan is one of the he would be the huge advocates to say no, unless it's something that we cannot literally physically do on camera. Like say for something with Inception, they would do. He would always be like, if we can do it on camera, we're gonna do it on camera.
I think what should be remarked is the lack of is the subtle CG that is there in Begins that works. Like I think there's some CG of the train and stuff like that, but for the most part, he tries to keep it and some of the explosions, but he tries to keep it as in camera as possible, so it makes it feel real. So I'm gonna be crazy how he's gonna do like the Odyssey and stuff. But I really do like this one, and I still like the Dark Knight. It's still one of my favorite cinematic experiences, but by comparison, I think if I had to pick between the two again, I would pick Begins.
Too, with that question.
Poor Rises. Oh, one thing about this movie is its pacing. It just moves at a good pace. It doesn't really lull or linger, unlike Rises.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like, oh goodness sakes. But yeah, how long is this movie again?
2 hours 20 minutes.
I haven't played. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like it though.
Whereas,
Kind of feels like the same pace as like the original Superman movie, really.
and then Dark Knight, the Dark Knight was a little bit longer, but Dark Knight Rises.
And you can, and I argue, kind of feel that because it's like moments where you feel like, okay, this is the middle act. No, we're actually the middle act is like about 30 minutes later here.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Dark Knight is amazing though. That's not to downplay it, but I feel like Batman Begins doesn't get the respect it deserves. So, just feeling we should give it its due because we wouldn't have the great Dark Knight without Batman Begins setting the stage. And that tease, I remember years ago, as a kid, being kind of like in and out of the movie. But as I grew up, I started to like it more. And I remember always getting chills when Gordon would give that last talk at the spotlight about how, you know, things are changing for the better, but also we're getting escalation. We got you running on with a mask, making the other people with theatricality come out. And when he shows us that Joker card, I'm all like, it's still a goosebumps moment for me. And
Yeah, and it's just a brief aside. I am kind of remembering what's that YouTuber's name? Is he does a lot of discussions, almost on a weekly basis, and he did one for the Nolan versus Batman, essentially. Um, you know who I'm talking about, right?
which one?
It's the oh goodness, what?
Is he like a comics guy? Oops.
Anthony Gramugula.
Oh, that guy, Ant. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a video recently of the Dark Knight ruined modern Batman. Um, and just I seen his video and he does make a lot of good points about it. And it's like I do feel like some of the points he made for how Nolan handled Batman should be seen as a way of like, hey, future filmmakers, try when you want to do your own take of Batman, don't look to Nolan. Nolan wanted to do his own take on Batman, and it worked out, but we kind of need to move on from it. And to some extent, I agree. I mean, we didn't need Robert Pattinson's Batman to be like Nolan versus, even though it is starting out gritty. We are going to be having things like Clayface and Mr. Freeze touted to be in the sequels.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, though, yeah, I agree with that thing. It's good for its time. It's good for what it needed to do. It's good for the character, bringing him back to relevance. But I think you could argue that the Dark Knight side effect of the Joker ended up ruining how the Joker was handled in future stories. That I do agree with wholeheartedly.
It's like he's always got to be this master plan and like this strategist and all that. It's like it reaches to a point where it's like I feel like how they write the Joker is kind of making the Riddler kind of be like pointless to have because he's supposed to be this master planner and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it was even to the point where even the comics decided like to have this story arc have a Joker Riddler war. Where it's like, really, these two would have beef of all the characters in the Batman Rogues Gallery.
What about Clock King? But yeah, but like, for better or for worse, its impact cannot be understated, and I think we all agree that we really do love it for that. And the first steps started here. Like you always say, you always remember baby's first steps. So, is there anything else you want to add to this?
I pretty much said everything. Actually, the personal side, when that movie first came out, I honestly thought it was actually in canon to the original Batman movies. Like, I mean, don't you can laugh all you want, but like I literally just a few years before that literally grew up on the notion that they can make movies that predate older movies that I've seen, like the prequels to the Star Wars movies that came out after the original Star Wars movies, and I thought it was gonna be the same function here. But then of course, me looking at it now is like I wonder how little kid me even saw it go, because like one, the original Gordon in '89 Batman doesn't even believe Batman is real. So unless he's like trying to like play off, it's like, oh no he's not real. He's, even though he literally just saw the whole thing with the arrows and exploding water mains and all that happening. The Batman's kind of the Joe Chill is essentially technically not dead. In fact, he's like Jack Napier. So I don't know. It was a weird thing.
Oh yeah, but yeah, like I said though, iconic images. I every time a shot I would love would pop up, I would annoy her saying, "Oh boy, here comes this shot," and then. Trust me, I'm not like this always when I watch movies, but when it's with a friend I really know and I really want to like highlight something I love, I'll be that Leo DiCaprio meme, pointing. But yeah, well, thank you for coming to me with the wee hours of the night for this one. I know you have a holiday weekend coming up soon, so I hope you enjoy that. And you get to see Jurassic tomorrow, you lucky gal.
Yeah. But to be fair, you are going to see Superman before I do next week, so everything's balanced.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Alrighty then. Well, I think we said all we had to say. If you clicked on this video, thank you for joining us to hear our rambling thoughts. That is the name of the game. I'm doing the Cat 79, aka Chris, signing up with my usual co-host Derica, aka Dark Neon.
Everyone have a good night, and yeah, there it is. Take us away, Mr. Zimmer.
Alright then. Oh, I didn't have the lead in for that, but okay. And good night.